Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome back to Cozy Horror with me, Dr. Plague. Week's almost over, but the days always seem to run together here. It's nice, just hanging out and doing what makes you happy. Are you doing what makes you happy? I feel like we should all take a little time out to follow our dreams and spend a little time with our passions. Take some time today. Do something that makes you truly happy. Truly, truly happy. Even if it puts you a little behind for what's coming up. Today's topic of discussion is strange getaways. And I think we've got some pretty good stories to help you get into the mood for just that. First up, we have a very strange getaway for the global elite, and a story told by a security guard stationed close by. So, let's hear a story from CIA Herpes about how I was a security guard for an island of global elites.
After high school, having no better ideas, I joined the Navy SEALs. I never really liked any of it, but it was a job, after all. I love the guns, the airplanes, the grenades, but having to run all the time while some scumbag with a chip on his shoulder yells in your face isn't my idea of fun. Things got a lot more interesting after my term of service ended. I still had a high security clearance, so I used it to take temporary jobs as a mercenary, hired gun. I did some stints in Iraq with Blackwater, where they sent me out in the middle of the desert. A watchtower, an oil refinery looming over the burning sands. Along with a few other guys, they told us, guard the area with your life. While better than the SEALs, working for Blackwater was extremely boring. The other mercenaries and I would mostly just chain smoke cigarettes and drink coffee all night, staring out across the dead, empty desert. Over time, I worked my way up. Things started to get more interesting when a job offer arrived in my email one afternoon. This is what it said. Mr. Chase, I am the head of security for a private group of entrepreneurs and investors. Through some mutual contacts, I've heard of your professionalism and experience. We're currently putting together a small crew of guards for a private event on Redacted Island out in the Pacific Ocean that will run from January 9th to January 27th. Would you be interested in this job? The pay rate is $900 a day. Once you're on the island, it will be impossible to leave until the period of employment has ended. If you're interested, please respond to this email as soon as possible. Sincerely, Mario Antonin, Head of Security. I'd worked jobs like this from time to time, but none of them were paying that well. At most, I would usually get $350 to $500 a day, which was still good money when I was working 7 days a week, till the job finished. I instantly responded and said yes, I was interested. In response, they sent me a non-disclosure agreement that was the size of a small novel. That was how I found myself on a private jet, flying out to an island in the middle of the vast blue sea. I was never told the coordinates of the island, or saw it on a map. It was all kept very secret. A few hours later, we landed on a private airstrip. I looked out the window of the jet, seeing the tropical waters of the Pacific Ocean stretching off to the horizon in every direction. Below me stood an island with palm trees and sandy white beaches. An enormous Victorian mansion loomed directly in the center of it all. The mansion was painted black and looked like something straight out of a horror movie. It had no windows, and the turrets spiraled up into blade-like points. That was my first inkling that something might not be quite right about this trip. As the stairs to the private jet descended, I looked out on this strange new world. Employees waited to greet us, looking like beaten dogs. Some had their heads down, their eyes blankly scanning the ground. Most of them were women wearing red dresses, reminding me of stewardesses on the plane. The jet strip was surrounded by palm trees and tropical brush. The chirping of insects sounded all around us, high and resonant. I saw a strange patch engraved on all the employees' uniforms. It looked like a stick figure drawing of a man, the bottom of his body ending in a C. Its arms were long and jointed, almost spidery. 3 symbols, like repeating iron crosses, connected the left side of the body in the line. I wondered if it was the logo of some company. I put it out of my mind for now, but I'd see that symbol again all over the island, painted on the side of the mansion, and even cut into the trees with a knife. It would only be later that night that I realized its connection to Moloch. "Good day, sir, and welcome to the island," the server on my left said, with glassy eyes and a fake smile. They all looked up at once, but it was like the workers all looked through me rather than at me. Their eyes looked flat and dead, like painted-on doll's eyes. "The island, huh? They wouldn't tell us where we were going. They said it was a secret. Is that what you call it?" The woman just nodded, the doll-like smile never leaving her face. "Officially, this island is unnamed and uninhabited," the woman said. "In fact, all traces of it have been scrubbed from the internet. You won't find it on Google Maps or any other publicly available satellite imagery." She leaned forward towards me with heavily mascaraed eyes and ruby red lipstick splashed across her lips. "This is a very special place. Only very special people are allowed here. We should be honored to work here under our Savior." "I hope you're talking about Jesus or something," I said jokingly. She just smiled blankly and motioned me forward. "Just follow the trail for a few hundred feet," she said, pointing at an opening in the palm trees where logs were laid down horizontally over the muggy jungle, "and you'll find the mansion. Good luck." I thought it was somewhat of a strange thing to say, wishing a random stranger luck. By the end of the night, I realized that simply to make it off the island alive, I might need that luck. I followed the woman's directions to the back of a brutalist mansion. A heavy metal door stood there with a small bulletproof window atop it. A tanned Spanish face glowered out at me, then rapidly drew back and disappeared. A few heartbeats later, the door slid to the side on a gliding of hidden gears. The head of security at the island was a heavily tattooed ex-Marine named Mario. He wore a dark Kevlar vest over his black outfit, making him look like a walking shadow. I found the security had their own private complex in the mansion, as he showed me around the site. Hundreds of hidden cameras covered every angle of the mansion, and the surrounding parts of the island, too. Dozens of black-clad security agents swarmed over the screens, checking monitors and computers constantly. "Quite a setup you've got here," I said to Mario, nodding at him. He smacked me on the shoulder, giving me a confident grin. "Money's no issue here, Richard. Security is paramount. There are things on this island that could rip apart the world if ever they escaped." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Nuclear weapons or something?" I asked, with a laugh. "You'll see for yourself later," he said, his dark eyes flashing with something cold and alien. Mario led me in a couple of the new hired guns around the island. The place was certainly strange. It reminded me of some combination of secret Black Ops site and a Playboy billionaire's private heaven. All the doors in the mansion looked like they were made of thick steel. They had wheels that would spin, like those on a submarine. The mansion also had no windows at all, at least none that I could see, except for the small shatterproof glass openings on the steel doors. I didn't want to ask too many questions, however. Couldn't resist asking him a couple of small things, though. At least, they seemed small to me. "What are those hatchways?" I asked Mario, pointing to the rectangular covers built into the concrete walkways. They had heavy handles. Are those manholes or something? "They're tunnels under the island, just for maintenance and security, you understand." "Wow, this place is certainly well developed," I said. We came out through a grove of palm trees. A stone walkway led down a white beach. Dozens of yachts were moored all across the shore, some of them looking like they must have cost hundreds of millions of dollars. "There's a lot of money and power here. That's why it's important you never talk about what you see here. There are people who control the world, the ones beyond the government and the media, not the elected officials who people see, but the actual power." "Like who? You mean the Rothschilds or the Suarezes?" I laughed again, a sarcastic, grinding laugh that grated my nerves. Trust me, the truly powerful ones don't even have public personas. If you know their names, then they're just one of the puppets. I just shook my head at that, and then asked the real question that had been bothering me since I arrived. Who's the Savior? I asked. Is that some code name or something? Mario froze in place. He's the one who runs everything here, he whispered conspiratorially, looking around nervously. But don't be mentioning that kind of shit here. You'll probably see him tonight anyway. He's the one who runs the show. He'll be on the stage in his normal outfit. By the end of the day, I was suited up like the rest of the security staff, wearing the pure black pants and shirt with the symbol of Moloch engraved over the heart. Hundreds of the world's most famous politicians, actors, businessmen, artists had gathered, streaming in the front gate with a lot of soft, quiet chatter. I stood by the open doorway of a side exit with my AR-15 and body armor next to one of the other soldiers. They had also given me a sidearm. Every entrance or exit was manned by at least 2 armed men. The security at this place was some of the most intense I'd ever seen. Beyond the door, there were rows after rows of the most comfortable seats, all gathered in a semicircle around a massive stage made of pure mahogany. Blood-red curtains stood closed in front of the room, concealing their secret, for now at least. I heard the elites inside calling out their praise for Satan. I didn't want to look at the rows of high-ranking politicians, celebrities, influencers, and what have you, but my curiosity was high. I peeked around the corner of the stone archway, seeing the red curtains on the stage drawing apart. Saw one of my favorite actors standing in the front row, clapping excitedly and jumping up and down. The crowd cheered as a naked female, strapped to an obsidian altar, lay there. She was beautiful, blonde, probably no older than 20, with the face of a supermodel. Her mouth was gagged, her arms outstretched like Jesus on the cross. Thin leather cords were tied around her wrists and ankles, biting deeply into the skin. Her eyes rolled wildly as she shook her head from side to side. She froze as her eyes met mine for a brief moment. I saw the pleading expression there, the mortal terror, the absolute horror. A man in a goat mask wearing black robes slunk out from the side of the stage, carrying a wavy silver dagger engraved with strange symbols. The crowd erupted into a primal roar of pleasure and excitement that sounded like it came from a monstrous mouth. "Worthy is the Lamb," the man in the goat mask screamed with electric amplification. He had a deep voice, as if he had rocks rolling around in his throat. The crowd roared and clapped. Scattered cries of "Hail Lucifer" and "Ah, Satan" echoed from the massive auditorium. "Hey, pay attention," the other security agent said at my side with a thick Finnish accent. He was a tall Scandinavian guy named Colmek. "You're not getting paid to watch the show, new guy." I tried to rip my gaze away from the stage, but it held my attention with the obsessive horror. "The burnt bones of children and women have been offered to the Ancient Ones, to Moloch," the man on the stage said. "Under our feet, the burnt bodies of hundreds lay dreaming. This victim will be the 666th. Her body will bring about the genesis we seek, the direct experience of the divine held by the gods, by Lucifer and Moloch and Baal." The roaring of the crowd temporarily drowned out the electrified magnification of his voice. "Tonight, we will rip open the veil." I had stopped watching the show, instead staring blankly out at the beach and the palm trees. At that moment, another black-clad security agent came up to my partner, whispering something in his ear, then immediately disappeared, heading off back in the direction of the main security office. Kolomek shook his head grimly. "I'll be right back," he said. "Stay right here. Don't move from this door no matter what. And pay attention." I nodded and watched as he walked off in the same direction. I immediately took the opportunity to continue watching the ceremony. I'd missed something important, apparently. The woman now lay dead on the sacrificial table, a gaping hole in her chest. Blood spurted from the crater as the man in the goat mask held her beating heart grasped tightly in his hands, letting the blood stream down his naked fingers. The crowd cheered with a rising bloodlust and insanity. Most of them were standing, their eyes gleaming and wide with fanatical adoration. The entire spectacle reminded me of some kind of ancient Aztec ritual. As the woman's sightless eyes stared vacantly up in death, the man in the goat mask pulled out a can of gasoline. The clear liquid gurgled as he upended the canister over her pale, bloodless face, over her naked stomach and long legs. A moment later, he lit a match and dropped it. I heard the whooshing of the flames as they rose up. The crowd went deathly silent as they watched the rippling flames. The man in the goat mask began chanting in some strange language I had never heard before. Sounded Semitic, but I knew it wasn't Arabic or Hebrew. I felt something like electricity ripple through the air, almost like a feeling of falling pressure before a storm. I looked down at the hairs on my arms, seeing them rise up. I looked back up at the stage, and my eyes widened in horror. The flaming body of the sacrificial victim had started to morph before my eyes and the eyes of the crowd around me. The dripping, blackening flesh jumped up and down as if there were rats trapped in her body trying to escape. There was a deafening hissing as if 1,000 snakes were being burned alive. The dead woman's arms jerked up, the skin splitting open as if she had seams running along her skin. Something dark and muscular with curving black talons ripped its way out of the dead, burning flesh. Behind it, a head appeared with long, curving horns and eyes that spun with whirls of fire. It looked like the offspring of a bull and a demon. Its imposing body rose from the inferno, appearing like magic from the solid stone. It raised itself to its full height, looming over the crowd, the last of the woman's blood hissing and boiling away as her flesh dissolved into ashes. "Behold, Moloch rises!" the man in the goat mask screamed in fanatical joy. The crowd's cheering had stopped, though. Many of the faces in the crowd looked chalk white with terror. A bull god surveyed the crowd, its horns nearly scraping the ceiling 20 feet above the stage. At that moment, I knew death was on its way, with eyes of fire and a grin like a skull, ready to reap the field of human bodies. I heard running behind me, but I didn't dare turn away from the horrific sight. The last of the fire's embers died, sending up thin wisps of gray smoke that spiraled around the bull god's monstrous face. Moloch stood as still as a statue. If it weren't for one thing, I might have thought it was some sort of sculpture or an art project. He had 2 nostrils like a serpent's. As his great lungs inhaled, the smoke billowed in and out of his mouth and nose. Some of the people at the edge of the crowd had gotten up, hurrying towards the door. Moloch's head ratcheted to face them, his fiery eyes narrowing into slits. "Do not leave," the man in the goat mask pleaded. "Those who have fear are not worthy of life. Do not prove yourselves unworthy of life." As the first of the fleeing men and women got to within a few steps of the door, Moloch gave a primal roar. In a blur of strength, he reached down and ripped the blackened sacrificial altar off the stage. It ripped from the wood with a tremendous crack, like a bullwhip. He hurled the heavy mass of stone at those heading towards the opposite exit, the one I was guarding. I watched it curve through the air. The people started screaming and clawing to escape as it smashed down on their heads with a grating crash. I could feel the floor shake from where I stood outside. Blood exploded from their smashed bodies. I saw arms and legs jerking and seizing under the heavy stone, but within a few moments they slowed and stopped. Others were running towards the exit, but Moloch leapt off the stage in a blur. In a few bounding steps, he reached the pale, terrified faces on the outside of the threshold. His massive clawed hands came down, I heard bones shatter as blood sprayed my face on the wall. Bone splinters and pieces of brain exploded from the screaming bodies. I backpedaled, wiping my eyes, trying to get the blood off so I could see. No one had told me what to do in this situation. I didn't know if I was supposed to shoot that massive thing or if this was all just part of the show. "Richard," a familiar voice cried from behind me. Panic oozed from every word. I spun, seeing Mario and Colomek standing side by side, their pupils dilated and their expressions grim. "We have a major problem." "I know," I said, holding my rifle tightly. I pointed behind me at the scene of rampant death and destruction. I'd seen bloodshed and war before, but this was different. The island itself seemed to feel it. The wind, which had been calm when I first arrived, now whipped the island in a fast circular motion. The breezes smelled of burnt matches and coppery blood. The static electricity, which had caused the hairs on my arm to rise, rippled over everything, with tiny blue flashes, increased in power by the second. "No, not Moloch," Kalak said, looking calmer than I felt. "The Savior lets Moloch thin the herd every year. It's Leviathan, the beast from the water. It smells the blood and is drawn from the depths of the ocean. We picked up the first blips on the radar a few minutes ago. When it gets here, it won't stop until everything is rubble. It'll kill everyone on the island." "All security personnel must report to the South Beach immediately," a cool robotic voice cried out over hidden loudspeakers all over the island. The screaming from the auditorium had quieted behind me. I was afraid to look inside. "There it is," Colmack said, his head jerking up as the emergency alert sounded. "It's time to fight," he said, motioning me to follow. We sprinted over curving trails of smooth logs between deadly quiet forests. All the insects and birds had gone silent. Ahead of us, the palm trees opened up onto the Pacific Ocean, but it was no longer a beautiful tropic blue. A black, swirling whirlpool, like an ulcerous wound, had opened up on its surface. It stretched hundreds of feet across, drawing closer to the shore by the second. Dead fish, sharks, dolphins, squids, even whales spun in the filthy dark water. 20 black-clad security agents waited for the three of us on the beach, their eyes wide, their faces pale with terror. Like myself, they all had AR-15s and Glocks with extra magazines for both. I guess the Glocks might be useful for blowing my brains out if it was a last resort, over being eaten by some hell beast, but I didn't think it would stop anything from another dimension. The clouds swirled overhead in a thick curtain as black as smoke. Flashes of blue lightning detonated every couple of seconds. Mario raised his hand, screaming over the roaring of the wind. Colomek stood by my side, his face grim and his eyes narrowed. "Your job is to fight off anything that tries to get on the island," Mario said, looking from one face to another with rapt attention. "Nothing can stand against high-caliber rifle fire. Shoot at the face and eyes when it comes up. We've dealt with creatures like this before, and they will retreat if you injure them badly enough." I had the sense of being fed a line of bullshit as my mind processed this. "What exactly is coming up?" one of the doe-eyed security men asked. He barely looked old enough to drink, a young, muscular hulk with a Marine Corps tattoo on his neck. "It is called Leviathan. Sometimes the ritual here and the smell of blood can draw strange things. Leviathan is one of those. We have encountered it before. Most important thing to remember is..." His voice was suddenly drowned out by the terrible cacophony that came from the center of the whirlpool. A screech like the detonation of a nuclear missile shook the ground. The ocean jumped and bubbled frantically. The beach heaved and creaked, the white sand disappearing in fissures that opened up like greedy mouths underneath my feet. I lost my balance, falling forwards. The screeching continued, rising into a primal roar. A green dragon head, the color of an infected wound, erupted from the surface of the thrashing water, rising up dozens of feet in the air. It had two enormous slitted eyes that dilated and constricted quickly, as if glowering down at us. The screeching abruptly stopped, the pointed mouth of the dragon slamming shut with a sound like a gunshot. Within moments, another cancerous green head shot up in a blur, its skin looking as hard as stone. Ridges that looked as sharp as swords ran the length of its reptilian skull, arcing over its eyes and pointed snout. More heads erupted from the ocean, until all 7 of Leviathan's heads loomed over us. Not one of us fired. Not one of us even seemed to breathe as we surveyed the beast across the no-man's land of white sand. The slitted eyes and yellowed irises of the 7 heads had a demonic hunger, a reptilian coldness. Far behind us, I heard a distant scream still echoing from the auditorium, where Moloch held sway. "Fire!" Mario cried. Instantly, a cacophony of gunshots exploded all around me. I jumped to my feet, scrambling up as the 7-headed dragon leapt forward. Thousands of gallons of salt water streamed down its massive body as it came up on the beach. Long black paws with bone-white talons shot out of the surging ocean, followed by a tapering tail like a water snake's. I brought the rifle up and emptied my magazine as fast as I could, pulling the trigger over and over as I aimed at the many slitted eyes of Leviathan. The bullets seemed to ping harmlessly off its hard obsidian scales, though. It scrambled onto the shore, its heads coming down in a blur, rows and rows of vampiric fangs gleaming dully in each of its mouths. One security agent was bit in half, the spurting stump of its lower body still standing for a long moment, even as the rest of the body disappeared down the throat of the dragon. Mario ran forward, slamming another magazine into his rifle and opening fire point blank. One of the heads came down in a blur towards him. Its great staring eyes exploded in a shower of blue blood and thick viscous fluid. The dragon's head pulled back, its mouth opening in a primal scream of agony. As I reloaded, I scanned the area around me, realizing that nearly half the security guys were either dead or critically injured. I backpedaled away, keeping my eyes on the dragon. It continuously drew forward, killing more of its enemies with every step. I turned and ran for the forest, the sounds of shattering bones and dying men ringing through the air with a sickening clarity behind me. Once I'd reached the borders of the trail, I heard Mario yell, "Retreat!" behind me. By that point, it was too late, though. "Hey, wait up," a voice whispered from behind me. I turned my head, seeing Colomac. Spatters of drying blood covered his face and uniform. As far as I could tell, none of it was his. "Mario's dead. They're all dead. We need to get out of here. We need to get off the island." "How?" "Find the Savior," he answered, panting and out of breath. "We must find him. He can get us out of here." "I don't even know what the guy looks like. He was wearing a goat mask." "You'll know him when you see him. His body is covered in scars, everything except his face. Stay close to me. We need to watch each other's back. It's our only chance of survival." A trail of twisted, broken bodies led from the mansion to the surrounding trails of the beaches. A decapitated woman with a solid gold necklace embedded with diamonds lay in front of me. It was strange on the island, the way oblivion and ineffable wealth coexisted side by side. Everything was deathly silent now, even in the mansion's auditorium. "Where's the Savior?" I asked through gritted teeth. I peeked my head into the auditorium, but nothing moved. Hundreds of smashed and bloodied bodies littered the floor. "He's around here somewhere," Colomac answered. He started circling the mansion, looking for signs of life. Colomac took the lead. As he turned a corner, an enormous black hand with sharp claws of fingers flitted towards us in a blur, wrapping itself around his chest. Colomac gave a strangled cry as it closed around him. I heard the bones crush as a spout of blood and gore flew from his mouth and nose, as if it were a toothpaste tube being squeezed. I backpedaled away as Moloch threw the twitching corpse aside like a discarded toy. It smashed into the wall of the mansion, exploding wetly. A human-shaped, bloody stain languidly dripping down the wall, above Colomec's mangled body. Moloch slowly turned his head towards me, the fiery eyes flashing with hunger. He gnashed his fangs together, taking a step forward with legs the size and shape of tree trunks. With every step he took, I felt the ground tremble. "Stop!" I cried, moving away from the monstrous creature. "Why are you doing this?" "There is no why," he gurgled, his voice monstrous and inhumanly slow. "There is only power. The weak deserve to die. Only the strong are worthy of life." I raised my rifle in a last-ditch effort to save myself. Moloch saw it and started running towards me, every step crushing the paved walkway around the mansion into rubble and dust. I aimed for his eyes and nose, emptying the entire magazine as quickly as I could. The bullets smashed into Moloch's face. Dark red clotted blood dripped out of the wounds, writhing with maggots. Drops of it fell around me, landing on my hair and face. I felt the small larva twist all over my skin. Moloch's blood smelled nauseating, like some combination of stink bugs and rotting bodies. He slowed, giving a roar of pain. I turned to run in the opposite direction, but as I looked out in the direction of the beach, my heart dropped. Leviathan was moving in our direction, the giant dragon head looming over the trees. Quickly, it swept towards me, like a dark wind. "You will suffer for that, worthless slave," Moloch growled, wiping blood from his fiery eyes with his sharp talons. A sudden idea came to me. I ran in the direction of Leviathan. Moloch followed closely at my heels, only a few steps behind. Leviathan slithered towards us over the sand and trees, its enormous body undulating like a water snake's. I screamed at it incoherently. Its 7 heads snapped towards me. Its slitted eyes widened as it saw Moloch. I heard the crashing of Moloch's footsteps behind me, only feet away from crushing me into paste. His massive lungs heaved, breath coming quickly, exhaling the odor of sulfur and smoke. "Leviathan," Moloch growled in his demonic voice. "These are my tributes." Leviathan's dragon head looked straight up at the sun and screamed in response, their many voices rising and falling in a dissonant wail. As I sprinted into the trees, Leviathan and Moloch ran at each other, colliding with an ear-splitting crash. I glanced back, seeing Moloch ripping one of the dragon's heads off its neck with his sharp fingers. The head screamed as blue blood erupted from the stump. After a moment, the neck fell limply forward. The other dragon heads bit Moloch in a unified attack. They ripped deep holes in his shoulder and arms, snapping over and over like rabid dogs. As the two eldritch monstrosities attacked each other in a fierce battle, I lost sight of them, but the sounds of fighting echoed over the entire island, crashing like lightning. I felt like the survivor of an apocalypse. I couldn't find a single other living person on the island. Hundreds of crushed, broken, and decapitated bodies surrounded me. Over the cacophony of fighting, I heard a new noise, the whirring of a helicopter nearby. It was coming from the other side of the mansion. Frantically, I sprinted towards the other side, seeing a Black Hawk helicopter getting ready to land. A man in black robes sat in the pilot's seat, his green eyes gleaming as a wide smile spread across his face. I smashed my fist into the door over and over until he opened it. "Holy shit, you're still alive?" he asked. I hadn't seen this man before. He had a face like a Calvin Klein model, all sharp angles and high cheekbones, perfectly proportioned in every way. But his scalp looked melted and scarred, as if someone had thrown gasoline on his hair and ignited it. His eyes were stunted, twisted growths of scar tissue. His hands, too, were covered in deep, folding burn scars. Are you the Savior?" I responded quickly. "Please get me out of here." "They call me that," he said wistfully. "The Savior, yes, I guess I am. Get in." The Savior stared at me with his strange green eyes, the color of swamps where monstrous things swam under the surface. "Some people just need to learn the hard way," he said. The helicopter took off into the dark night, covered with bright twinkling stars. There is no great power without great responsibility, after all. Those of us who seek the Ancient Ones know it comes with a cost. I just stared out the window, gazing down at the countless mutilated bodies that littered the beach. Below us, the face of the bull stared up with eyes of fiery cyclones. The broken, still body of Leviathan lay at its feet. As we made it over the great waters of the Pacific Ocean, the bull god raised its hand and waved. At that moment, I thought I could almost see a hurricane of translucent souls circling around him, spiraling up into the sky.
Sometimes jobs take you to very unexpected places, at very unexpected times in your life. Just be sure you know where your ticket's going to be punched. Coming up next, we have another story about a getaway, a far-off locale with just what you've been looking for. So, without further ado, let's get away.
Liz couldn't really say she didn't know why she was here, but she could question why. Why a wise and just God would leave her here was beyond her, and if this was his plan, she wasn't sure of his wisdom. She could see him standing in the shadow of the palm trees, eyes red like a dog caught in the flash of a camera. All it did was stare, but she felt as if it wasn't all it intended to do. The trip had been one they'd planned for years, a girls' trip to the Bahamas, just her and her old sorority sisters, on a cruise for 5 sun-soaked days. Liz had been looking forward to it. It'd be nice to get out of the house for a while. Her B.A. in administration had mostly made a great dust catcher in the last 8 years since her graduation. Between the kids, the house, and her husband, and her call center job that she did to bring in a little spending money, she had little time for anything else. Well, that wasn't entirely true. Liz had contented herself with talking with her old sorority sisters, Janet, Claudia, and Maria, about their lives and what they'd all been up to. Janet wrote for a food blog, she and her husband jet-setting around as he ran his export business, and Liz loved to hear about all the foreign places she found herself in. Claudia was a lawyer, always the brains of the bunch, and Liz often celebrated with her over the computer about her courtroom victories. Maria was a designer in New York, and Liz would be lying if she didn't admit that she grudgingly lived vicariously through her bestie. Maria lived like one of the girls on Sex and the City, with a constant diet of different men, different gigs, and different problems that seemed to fix themselves before they got out of hand. Liz's life, in contrast, was pretty mundane. Her friends gushed appreciatively over the pictures of her kids, none of them having any, but it was clear that their admiration was mostly lip service. They were out living spectacular lives, while Liz was stuck in the gilded cage with her eggs. She was comfortable. Harold was a good man who took care of the bills and gave her whatever she wanted. She loved her kids dearly, but watching her friends as they went about their lives made her feel like hers was going nowhere. As she sat beside the fire, alone and watching the red-eyed creature, she now wished that she had stayed in her comfortable rut. When she had told Harold about the trip, his only real concern had been who would watch the kids. Harold was a dutiful husband, but he reminded her of an old song her mother had liked. She couldn't remember the name, but her mother had played it on cassette as she cleaned the house. Harold reminded her of a line from the song, one her mother always sang in tones of deepest disgust, a line that embodied Harold as much as it embodied her own father. "I'll raise the children while you go have a beer. Where is my John Wayne? Where is his shining gun? Where's my lonely ranger? Where have all the cowboys gone?" It was a good line. It had encompassed her life so well. Harold was not the owner of an export business. He wasn't a model or a defense attorney who might be moved to sleep with her after a trial. Harold was an assistant manager in a company that made oil drilling equipment. He was nice enough. He was stable. But his interest in her had clearly waned. It had happened sometime after their second child. She saw his eyes began to wander, and if he wasn't already having an affair, that his impending midlife crisis would surely drive him into one. She had assured him that her sister would watch the kids while he was at work, but that he might have to miss his after-work bar trips this week. I'm sure she'll watch them on Saturday, though, so you can meet your associates at the links for your golf game. In retrospect, she thought he might have been a little too glad to hear how her sister, 19 and home from college, would be coming to sit with the kids. But that might just be in her head. The news that he could still golf on the weekends had softened his mood a bit. He even slipped her a few extra hundreds so she could fly to Orlando instead of driving. The idea that she might be stuck in traffic and miss her cruise was comforting now. But as she thought about the reunion with her friends, it brought a smile to her cracked lips. They had all met at the airport. First Liz and Maria, with Janet and Claudia flying in an hour later. The four had gone to dinner, drinking and talking about what they'd been doing, and finally boarded the boat at nightfall. They'd had a grand send-off with fireworks and champagne, and the four of them had talked excitedly about what they would do once they arrived in the Bahamas. "Hope your husbands gave you a day pass, ladies," Maria joked with Janet and Liz, "'cause you never know who you might meet on this trip." As Liz stared at the man-shaped thing, its unblinking eyes focused on her like twin beams. She wasn't sure that this was the someone that Maria had meant. It had all been smooth sailing until the second night. The four of them had drank at the bar, dined in the main hall, watched a few of the floor shows, and gone to bed thoroughly pleased. Maria had come in a little later, after leaving with a fella from the bar, and Liz wondered if she might pick up a fling of her own. She had turned red at the thought. Did she dare do such a thing? She didn't think she could, but who knew what a trip might bring? The second day had been spent around the pool. Liz was a little more self-conscious than the other three. She'd never quite gotten her figure back after her second child, but that didn't stop the eyes from finding her. They soaked up the sun, pretending to ignore the ogling eyes of those who looked, and Liz felt desired in a way that she hadn't since college. Harold did his duty at least once a week, but she'd come to suspect that that was out of habit. The men who looked at her and her friends seemed willing to do far more than their duty, and the thought made her smile as she watched them from behind her sunglasses. They had dressed in their best that night, their reservations at the captain's table being semi-formal, and Liz thought she might find herself in someone else's bed besides her own later. She was feeling confident in a way that she hadn't since she had met Harold, and as they laughed over drinks and appetizers, she wished the night would never end. When the ship stopped suddenly, groaning as if it had hit something, and lurching like a wild animal, she hoped she was asleep in her bunk still, her afternoon nap still ongoing. Now she knew better. As she felt her eyes getting heavy and heard the strange singing that had marked every evening after the first, she knew that the nightmare never ended. They started to evacuate soon after the sudden stop. The ship had run up against something, and it had shredded the side. Liz and her friends were shoved into a lifeboat with about a dozen others. They bobbed out into the night as the boat rode low in the water, its guts filling with the balmy island sea. Liz reflected that at least there had been enough boats for everyone, as the crewmen rowed them towards a collection of islands nearby. As Liz sat beside her friends, the adrenaline starting to ebb and the ocean rocking her amidst the warm bodies, she felt herself starting to drift off. You'd have said that such a thing was impossible, but she could hear others yawning and one particularly loud snorer behind her. She leaned her head against Maria and felt the other woman breathing heavily. It appeared Liz wasn't the only one getting tired, and as she drifted off, she thought she heard the first snatches of a song that would become very familiar. When she woke up, she found herself alone, the boat beached as the surf pushed it in and out amongst the sand of some unknown island. Liz had no idea how long she had been there, but the fact that she was alone filled her with a palpable dread. Where had everyone gone? Was she the only one left out of the 20 or so people in the boat? She got up, but immediately sat down as her sleeping legs refused to hold her. She tried to rub some of the feeling back into them, her hands as numb as her legs, and that was when she noticed the thing around her finger. It was a ring, woven from coconut fibers. and she couldn't remember seeing anything like it before. Where had it come from, and who had put it on her? It was tight on her finger, but Liz couldn't call it uncomfortable. It sat flush against her skin, and as she lifted it up to take a better look, she saw the creature for the first time. The island swam with fog, the trees and sand leading her to believe that it must be tropical. She had seen him in the mist, leaning against a palm tree as he stared at her. The two locked eyes, and she felt her skin crawl as he stared silently. It was as if they were the only two in existence, and the longer it went on, the less human he began to look. His arms became less human as they thickened and waxed and waned. Its legs appeared to double, then triple, and its head bulged oddly before returning to its normal dimensions. It was man-shaped, but certainly no man. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, but when it turned its head suddenly, the spell was broken. She heard Maria calling her through the fog, and when she turned back to look, it was gone. "Glad you're finally awake," Maria said. "We got a little worried when you wouldn't wake up." How long was I out for?" Liz asked, getting shakily to her feet as the pins began to recede. "Nearly a whole day. We left 3 others out here with you. Did all you wake up at the same time?" Liz shook her head as Maria took her arm and led her up the beach through the fog. "We've been trying to make something that will get the attention of ships or planes, but the fog is so thick I'm not sure anyone will see us. The rest of us have been trying to get some shelters up, but it's hard to find materials and all this." As they came through the fog, Liz could see that there were around 15 others milling about. Men, women, even a couple of kids went about their tasks without much enthusiasm. They looked at Liz disinterestedly as she and Maria approached, and Liz saw Janet and Claudia as they turned rocks into words so a plane might see them. They both waved as they walked over to them. The rest of the day was spent raising lean-tos and setting up fire pits. She met some of the others, her fellow castaways, and they seemed to have quite a mixed bag. There was Ben and his sister Catherine, Angela and her daughter Celeste, Margot, Roger, his boyfriend Francis, Tracy, who carried around a typewriter case with a manuscript inside, Gail, Kathy, and her son, Gregory. They feasted on nuts and fruit, coconuts, and some little crabs that Ben and Francis had managed to scare up around dusk, and as they ate, the group discussed what they would do tomorrow. "It might be nice to take stock of the island," Ben said. "Find out if there are any others here." "A source of fresh water might be good, too," Maria put in, and Liz couldn't help but notice that she kept looking shyly at the older man as he agreed. Liz tried to keep up, but it was hard to focus on planning. It was hard to focus on anything with the pair of red eyes that stared at her from the nearby palm tree. No one else seemed to have noticed it, and the longer it stared, the more she realized that it was staring only at her. Whatever the creature was, it seemed to have eyes only for Liz, though the attention was far from flattering. Her finger itched, and Liz realized that it was the first time she had thought about the ring in a while. She wondered if it had been given to her while she slept. Why not just take her too, if it had gotten that close? As the others began to get comfortable, Liz watched the creature in the fog as it stood its lonely vigil, which was why she was still awake when the singing began. Liz didn't know where it came from or whether it had anything to do with the mysterious voyeur, but she blinked a little too long and found the red eyes had gone when she was awake. She sat blinking, the sounds of snoring vibrating around her. The night was suddenly split by a heavy baritone. It rolled across the sleeping people, hitting Liz like the warm steam off a cup of tea. As she watched, a few of her fellow survivors staggered up, getting to their feet and walking towards the jungle. They moved like sleepwalkers, their legs taking them shakily into the fog. In the dark, Liz wasn't certain who it had been, but in the morning, there were 2 less than there had been the day before. She hadn't slept that night, but as the sun came up and turned the fog into a blanket of diamonds, she pretended to. The last thing she wanted was to answer questions about missing people. No one seemed to notice at first, but by noon the disappearance of 2 people was hard to ignore. "Any idea where Roger and Francis are?" Catherine asked, looking around like she might have just missed them. "Off doing God knows what, I'm sure," Ben muttered, drawing some dark looks from a few of the others. He had made his displeasure at the pair of them pretty clear to everyone but them, and didn't seem to care about their disappearance too much. A couple of people talked about going to look for them, but it was finally decided that if they had gone off on their own, then they would either come back or they wouldn't. People went about their day, some looking for food, others trying to find planes or boats to hail. As the day spun out, Liz wondered if she should tell someone what she had seen the night before. She hadn't told anyone about the man-shaped thing in the jungle, and if it was the same thing taking people, maybe they needed to know. Her thoughts chased her throughout the day, but as the sun set and the fire cast sparks into the night sky, Liz found herself awake and searching for the creature. She hadn't had far to look. It had been there since dusk, just watching her as she sat by the fire. The fog was still a thick pea soup, and the image within it swelled and distorted as she kept an eye on it. Her head dipped and jittered as she tried to stay awake, but when the singing began tonight, it was like a sweet lullaby. She saw 3 shapes rise around her, the fire turning them into silhouettes against the sparks, and as they stumbled away from the dancing flame, she tried to call out to them, to raise some kind of an alarm. She was fading away as the deep, resonant voice drowned her amidst the crashing waves of the beach, however, and soon she found herself asleep. The camp awoke to find they were 10 now, and Liz discovered that one of the shades had been Claudia. Another had been Angela's daughter, and she was beside herself with grief. "Has anyone seen Celeste? She was right here next to me when I fell asleep last night." "We should go look for them," Maria suggested, looking pleadingly at Liz and Janet as she tried to move the others to go with her. Most didn't seem keen on going off into the mist to hunt for people who'd disappeared, especially if there was something out there taking them. Liz found it impossible not to be moved by Maria's words, though, and Janet seemed to feel the same. Claudia was their friend, and Celeste was just a child. The thought of them lost and scared in a strange place made Liz's heart ache, and the 3 assured Angela that they would try their best to find her daughter. She thanked them tearfully. The disappearance had left her in a state of grief so deep that she could do little but sit and rock as she cried. In the end, the 3 set out to search for those who had disappeared, and the others watched them leave, with not much expectation that they would see them again. The foliage smooshed wetly underfoot as they searched, the fog a constant blanket around them. The palms gave way to thin pines and wispy spruces that seemed to grow small, round nuts. The ground was far too wet to see much. Any footprints that might have existed were obliterated by the soupy ground, and as the 3 women searched the jungle, they found no trace of the missing people. Liz was no tracker, but in the movies there were always signs left behind when someone went missing in the woods. Fabric left on a tree, hair hanging from a branch, maybe a swatch of blood smeared across the bark. But there was none of that here. It was as if the island had swallowed them up, leaving nothing behind to mark their passage from life to death. The whole time, Liz felt like she was being followed. She glanced fitfully around as she looked for the man-shaped thing. She caught the odd glance of something, some vague shape amidst the mist, but it was impossible to tell if it was her voyeur or not. She felt pursued, this thing dogging her heels wherever she went, and she began to wonder if it was the thing that had summoned them to the island. Were they all just lunch for this creature? A game of cat and mouse to break up the monotony of its existence? When the sun began to set, they were forced to head back to camp empty-handed and heavy-hearted. Angela was inconsolable. The group came together for her, but their eyes were more often than not on the jungle. The fires were stoked, and as people began to get comfortable for sleep, Liz found herself too tired to join them. She had collapsed after they'd returned from the search, exhausted from all that walking, and her sleep had been heavy and dreamless. That night, Liz finally got to meet her mysterious watcher, and it likely saved them from another loss. It was late when she jerked awake, unsure how long she'd been asleep. The fire was burning low now, the ashes flickering into the sky as the logs crumbled beneath the assault of the heat. Liz thought at first that the waves had woken her up, but as she glanced into the gathering shadow, she could see those red eyes as they bore into her. They were closer now, maybe 15 feet away, but Liz was finding it harder and harder to be terrified of her mysterious watcher. The longer she sat looking at those red eyes, the more curious Liz found herself. "Hello?" she asked, keeping her voice low so as not to wake anyone up. The red eyes blinked, unsure, but when a voice answered her, it was very different from the deep baritone she'd heard singing at night. "Hello," it answered, its voice unsure as its features remained unknowable from behind the thick fog. Do you live here?" Liz asked, feeling foolish almost at once. It had been here since before they got here. Of course it lived here. "Yes, for most of my life, I think." The two talked for a bit, Liz becoming more comfortable the longer it didn't simply leap on her and gobble her up. It confirmed her suspicions that the island wasn't boundless and that her group of survivors were the only people here. She asked about the fog, and it told her that it just always was here, but that it kept everything nice and cool, so it wasn't unwelcome. It would have amazed her how quickly she fell into a normal conversation with this creature if she hadn't been so absolutely exhausted. As it stood, it seemed like the most natural thing to have happened in a while. "Are you the one singing at night?" she asked after it finished telling her about the caves near the edge of the island. It was beginning to lighten on the horizon, and Liz realized that it might leave before she got some of her burning questions answered. The eyes had been crinkling a little as it spoke, clearly enjoying their talk, but as she asked about the song, they took a different downturn. Was it mistrust, or was he ashamed of the answer? "Yes, that's me," he answered, clearly hesitant. Are you the one—" "Liz?" someone said sleepily, and Liz turned to see Maria sitting up groggily. Who are you talking to?" Liz turned back to introduce Maria to the thing she'd been so comfortably chatting with, but it was gone. "No one. Must have been talking in my sleep," Liz answered. There were no new missing people in the morning, but it did little to help the tension. Ben had started talking about making spears or something to defend themselves, but most of the others were more concerned with surviving. Even so, the foragers took homemade spears he had made when they went to look for food. His sister Catherine tried to talk to him, telling him that he was making everyone anxious, but he loudly told her that everyone should be worried about whatever was taking people in the night. Angela looked like a ghost as she sat looking at the waves, and people seemed content to give her space. She was mourning the loss of her daughter, and it was unclear whether her tears were swelling the ocean or the ocean was rushing forward to give her its salt. Liz found herself thinking about the odd creature as she went about her day. It hadn't been like she had expected, and she found herself wondering if it had really been the one taking people. She still hadn't told anyone about it, and most of the others would have assumed that she was going crazy. The thought of those red eyes creeping up to talk to her in the night would have scared some of them and made others think that she was losing it. Worse yet, she suspected that Ben would stay up and try to fight it if she told him, so she kept her mysterious new friend to herself. For the next week, she would stay up after the fire burned low and meet with it. She didn't hear the singing on those nights, and the red eyes seemed more than happy to come back night after night so they could learn more about her. Whatever it was, it seemed very interested in Liz and the life she had lived on the mainland. They talked about boats and cars and television, the food she used to eat, the people she'd known, her family, anything else the creature could think of. Liz would find herself watching him as his body did strange things, thickening and shriveling, multiplying and dividing, and the longer she watched it, the less afraid she became. The longer they talked, the less substantial it seemed to become, and that worried her. Liz found that she was afraid of losing it, the thing that made her feel almost normal. The mist seemed to clutch at it, making its features even less recognizable, and it added a level of unreality to it. It made it seem as if it were fading away. "Can I tell you a secret?" it said suddenly, leaning in close one night and causing Liz to blink as the fog pattered against her face. Sure, she said, glad for a break in conversation. Liz had been worried that she might run out of things to talk about, and then it would go away. She'd forgotten to be afraid of it, and was glad for the company and the attention this thing showed her after everyone else had gone to sleep. She missed her family and her children most of all, but having it here to talk to made it a little easier, a little more tolerable. When you first noticed me, I had come to watch you. Me? Liz asked, surprised. Why me? I noticed you when your boat came. You were just sitting there, sleeping, and I couldn't take my eyes off you. That's why I gave you the ring. Liz had been struggling with the conflicting nature of being both uncomfortable at the idea of this thing watching her and strangely flattered by its attention. When was the last time anyone had paid that sort of attention to her? Certainly not at home. Certainly not since she left college and started her descent into wedded bliss. She jumped a little when he mentioned the ring, having almost forgotten about it until right then. Sometimes she would go all day without thinking about it, and then it would suddenly catch on something, or the scratchy fibers would peel at her skin like steel wool, and she would remember that it was there. You gave me the ring? She asked, watching its head wobble oddly. I did, and though it sounded like it wanted to say more, it was unsure how to proceed. I don't know what to say, Liz said, knowing exactly what she wanted to say, but unsure if she could ask. The two sat in silence for a few minutes, just listening to the waves break on the beach as they stared at each other. Why don't you ever sing any more? Liz asked suddenly, causing the eyes to back up a little bit. They backed further away, getting closer to the tree line, but still unable to look away from Liz. Why don't you sing any more? She asked again, and this time it sounded like an accusation. He was almost 30 feet away, but Liz still heard him when he whispered the secret he longed to keep hidden. Because I don't want to hurt you, but I'm so hungry. As the sun came up, dispelling some of the fog, Liz was left with nothing but her confusion of mismatched feelings. Whatever he was, he managed to hold out for another 3 days. Liz didn't see him again until the third night, and that was when she heard the singing. Liz had thrown herself into any task she could find, trying to take her mind off of him. She wasn't exactly sure when he had gone from it to a him, but the transition made her wary. She'd been working to leave the island, wanting to return to the life she'd known, but now her tasks seemed so pointless. Maria had started lighting fires along the coast in an attempt to get the attention of a passing ship. Janet wanted to make a map of the island, something they could use to explore deeper for supplies. Ben wanted to find better shelter in case the weather changed. Gail wanted to try to find out if they could see the shipwreck at some point on the island, so they could get their bearings. Tracy just wanted to sit and work on her manuscript, and the others seemed content to just exist here until it was all over. It all seemed very trivial to Liz. Despite this, she threw herself into anything that came her way, whether it was scouring the island for resources, looking for somewhere to move the group, or just feeding fuel to the multiple signal fires. All the while, she could feel the eyes of her admirer as they followed her. She never saw him lurking in the mist, but she could sense his presence. He kept his distance, watching her from afar, and Liz was worried that she had offended him. She had suspected that he was the one luring people away, but she hadn't really understood the implication until he'd spelled them out for her. They would never find their fellow survivors, no matter how much they searched, and it was strange to feel so attached to someone who saw you as food. Angela had disappeared on the second day, but Liz doubted that her new friend had anything to do with it. Angela had done little else but weep for 2 days, the sea drinking her tears greedily. She wouldn't eat or drink, wouldn't come to camp no matter what the time, and when they woke up to find her stretch of beach had gone empty, Liz assumed that she had just wandered out into the sea. It might have been the kindest thing for her, but Ben had other ideas. With only 9 of them, Ben and Gail were now carrying clubs and accompanied anyone who left the camp to forage. They had appointed themselves as de facto guardians of the camp, and Ben seemed to have decided that he was their leader. He and Catherine argued often, but his patience for her seemed to be running thin. Kathy and Gregory had taken to sleeping close to Liz and her friends, and Kathy kept a protective arm around her son at all times. Tracy slept with her arms around her typewriter case, holding it like someone might a stuffed animal, but even she had moved closer to the group for protection. When Catherine came to join them on the third night, they all slept in a shallow pile, like rabbits in a warren. Ben and Gale sat around the fire, blinking owlishly as they kept watch. But to Liz, it began to feel more like a prison camp than a group of survivors. Liz woke up on the third night to the sound of singing. She found herself looking for those piercing red eyes amongst the fog, and found his shadowy body not too far away. Dark forms imposed themselves across her vision, and she watched them lumber into the trees before realizing what had actually woken her. It was only Ben by the fire now, Gale having left to go with her mysterious admirer, but now only Tracy's battered typewriter case was left to mark that she had existed at all. Some of the others were beginning to squirm, but instead of lingering, the music began to fade almost at once, making a couple of them jerk quietly as they sat down. One of them had been Janet, all three of the women sleeping close enough to each other for some semblance of protection, and as Liz settled back in, she found herself feeling torn about the absence of her mysterious new friend. Ben was upset the next day, enraged by the loss of Gale, and the others stuck close to camp that day. A light rain had blown in, and they seemed content to fix the boat tarp they had taken off the lifeboat to keep the worst of the rain off the fire. They huddled underneath it, shivering as the storm pattered around them. Ben stayed up late, his sleep utterly forgotten, but Liz's visitor didn't come back that night. She supposed he was full after eating so well the night before, but Liz still found her own sleep difficult. She was exhausted, unsure how much longer she could do this, and as she drifted off, she wondered who would be missing in the morning. When Janet's hand slid out of hers, Liz sat up in time to watch her walk out into the rain. The singing was getting farther away already, and when she looked at Ben, she found that he was snoring in the sand after tumbling off the log he'd been sitting on. Liz went after her friend before she could think better of it, and the rain was cold on her face as she moved out into the darkness. It didn't seem to affect Janet at all, and as Liz pulled at her to get her attention, it was like pulling on a stone. She strained at her, looping her legs around her as she tried to trip her up, but Janet's eyes were set as she made her way into the woods. Janet pulled her into the jungle, the two still struggling, and Liz could see those red eyes burning into the depths of her from the woods. "Stop it!" she yelled, tears mingling with the rain and sliding down her face. "Don't take her! She's my friend!" There was silence in the jungle, broken only by the falling of the rain as it hit the thick fronds of the trees. It was almost too loud for her to hear when he spoke, but it was just loud enough to reach her as he slipped into the wet blackness of the surrounding jungle. "Sorry, it's my nature," said the scorpion to the frog. She was left to ponder that as the rain soaked her to the bone, leaving her confused and apprehensive. Maria wrapped Liz in a hug when she came back, the camp awake and holding torches. They had spears too, even Gregory, and Ben pressed one into Liz's hand as Maria let her go. His eyes mistrusted her, but were resolved. He was clearly suspicious of her, but with only 6 of them remaining, he was forced to put his misgivings aside. "We're going after it," he said. And as her eyes grew wide, Ben smiled knowingly. "That's right. I've seen it too. I saw it tonight as you tried to drag your friend back, and I've seen it lurking around the camp more than once. I'm still not sure it's the thing that's taken people, but at this point, I don't much care. We're gonna find it. We're gonna kill it before it kills us." Liz wanted to deny him, wanted to scream at him, wanted to stab the spear into him and make him shut up, but instead, she fell in with Maria and let him lead her into the semi-darkness. She felt claustrophobic as they made their way into the jungle. Ben had no clue where he was going, but as the sun rose over the horizon, he kept them moving as their torches burned low and their clothes clung to them. They had set out with bellies full of fire, determined to find this thing. They crisscrossed the island, the sun dispelling the shadows as they moved, but they never seemed to find anything that could make a good hiding spot for anything bigger than a bird or a badger. The longer they searched, the more frantic Ben seemed to become. "Where are you?" he kept whispering, looking around frantically as he stalked the groves. "It has to be here somewhere." His need to find the creature seemed insatiable, but by noon, Ben was forced to admit that he had no idea what he was doing. The group was tired and hungry, their legs hurting and the fire in them now quenched by the mist as they turned back towards the campsite. Ben seemed completely demoralized. Catherine finally put a hand on his shoulder, reminding him that they were exhausted and needed to eat, and he was finally forced to turn around and head back to camp. They had covered the whole island, beach to beach, and found no sign of Janet or anyone else. As they trudged back, Ben wasn't the only one looking downtrodden. They all knew that come morning, they would likely be 5 instead of 6. Liz sat by the fire now, remembering the last few days with sobering clarity. Ben had been taken next. He had tried to stay up and keep watch, wanting to catch this thing so he could keep them safe from it. But in the end, he had succumbed and fallen asleep. They had all been so tired after trudging through the jungle, but when they woke up, he was already gone. Kathy was next, and Gregory's cries had brought the rest of them around the next morning. By then, the 4 of them had been frantic. No one wanted to be next, but it seemed inevitable. They were all tired, their meals growing smaller as their numbers dwindled, and they were utterly trapped by the island they now found themselves on. They couldn't fight him. They couldn't escape him. They were nothing but cattle, just waiting for the slaughter. Catherine went next, but by then, Liz already thought she knew what she had to do. When he returned the following night, she was waiting for him. He seemed confused when he found her awake, Maria and Gregory snoring around her, and when she put a finger to her lips, his nod made her stomach churn. "What will you do when they're all gone?" she asked, watching the fire dance between them as the mist made it hiss. He didn't answer her, his red eyes boring into her as he hunkered and watched. "You seem to be saving me for last. Do you hate me so much that you'd make me watch the people I care about disappear before it's my turn?" "Never," he blurted, and she shushed him as Gregory stirred. "I would never torture you like that. It's only that I can't bring myself to hurt you. I need to eat to survive, but I hate that it must come at the expense of you." They pondered this for a moment, the fire hissing and spitting like an angry cat. "What if I went with you now? Would you let these 2 go and take me?" He was silent, but his nod was all the answer she needed. "Lift the mist and let them go, and I'll go with you." He seemed startled. I can't promise your safety. It's hard for me to control my hunger, as you've seen. I'm not sure I could forgive myself if I hurt you. I'm sure you'll have no trouble calling more boats here, just like you did to ours, right?" The eyes looked away sheepishly, but he didn't bother to deny it. "How did you know?" "I guessed. Just like I guessed that this ring might be stopping your song from calling me away at night. Right?" He nodded again. "It won't protect you, though, if I decided to just gobble you up one day when I got hungry." "It's a chance I'll have to take," she said, getting up and walking towards him. The red eyes widened, but as she walked into the mist that surrounded him, the cold membrane encompassed her and accepted her. Liz felt conflicted as she watched the boat leave with Maria and Gregory. The sound of the deep whistle had brought the 2 around as the sun rode high in the morning, and Maria had called her name for quite a while before leaving with the boy. The ship had seen the messages on the beach, seen the smoke from their fires, and Liz had been afraid that Maria wouldn't go for a minute. As the boat grew smaller and smaller on the horizon, a part of Liz wished she was on it. Another part had already accepted that this was her new home, as certain as she was that she belonged with the man whose strange hand now clutched at hers. As strange as it sounded, this had been the trip she wanted. Her old life seemed so dull now, Harold and her children had already started to fade as she stood beside this strange creature. As she turned to look at him, she wondered if she would become like him one day. Maybe he had been like her once, before being discovered by something like him. Maybe he had left a life like hers behind, sacrificing everything because it felt right. Regardless, this was her home now, and as she turned to look at him, she felt complete in a way that she had never felt before.
Sometimes vacations can be very restful, but sometimes they can be quite the ordeal that you never quite get over. Coming up next, we have a story about a traveler stuck in a very strange airport. Brought to us by John C. Mack. Let's hear about being stuck in Hell's Airport.
I don't have much time, so if things sound a little weird, just bear with me. This is a warning. If you see black clouds at all, just run. Doesn't matter where you are. I don't know if this thing is spreading. I'm getting ahead of myself. On April 5th, my wife and I took off for a wedding in Vermont. Before we left, we heard the news talk about a big northeastern storm that's going to drop a bunch of snow and ice. Even though it looks like we're going to be okay since our plane is landing technically in New Hampshire, just south of the storm. The flight was 2 hours, but about halfway through the trip, the clouds started to change color. Not gray like you'd expect. Darker. More like black. Looking more like volcanic ash clouds than normal storm clouds. My wife was busy playing her Nintendo Switch, but since I was laid off, I had a lot on my mind. I was a little surprised that nobody else noticed it, but off in the distance, I could have sworn I saw something move in the distance. It was hard to tell. It sort of looks like a wing swooping through the clouds, like a fish that makes 180s at the surface. The pressure wake pushed the clouds outward, like something was coming and then changed its mind. It had to be a trick of the eye, probably. It had to be the sun hitting and reflecting away off the ash clouds. I shouldn't have been assuming they were ash clouds, but time proved me right. The pilot never made any announcement, and I didn't really see anything either, so I kept my mouth shut. Maybe if I hadn't, things would have turned out different for Courtney. When I looked away, I happened to catch one of the flight attendants staring at her. Her head slightly tilted, and she wouldn't take her eyes off of me. It sounds strange, but it felt like she was waiting to see if I was about to tell my wife what I had seen. I decided to keep looking busy, and even decided to shut my eyes for a few minutes. Thinking she had just seen something might distract the old veteran stewardess's attention. It had to be about 10 minutes because I listened to my favorite song twice and another song before opening my eyes. And to my shock, she was still looking at me. Now, her teeth looked different, like she was trying hard to smile. I swear it looked like her gums were bleeding. I decided to get up and go to the bathroom, the one farthest from her. That must have done the trick, because when I came back, she had moved on to her normal duties of serving passengers. When I got back, my wife finally noticed the black clouds, but by this time we could barely see past the wing. Did the pilots see anything? Not wanting to worry her, I assured her they have all kinds of communications and radar. Even if they can't see in front of them, they know where they're going. She gave me a look. Courtney was like that. She could see right through me like an MRI machine. The fasten seatbelt sign came on, and with it, the pilot's voice. Attention travelers, we'll be making our final descent momentarily. Please make sure all loose items are stored, as you won't be needing them. What's that mean? That was weird. I looked around, and thankfully, someone else, who I would shortly find out was our air marshal for the flight, stood up and headed for the cockpit, his face a mask of concern. He shut the drapes behind him, so no one could see him. I heard him knocking loudly and asking to be let in. Just then, the stewardess from earlier rushed by me, running against my arm. Suddenly, my arm was in drastic pain. I looked down, and it looked like someone had taken a cheese grater to it. My wife looked to try and help me. "Oh, God, are you okay? What happened?" I told her I wasn't sure and started pressing dirty paper towels and Skittles wrappers on my wound to stop the bleeding. My wife yelped for help. Other people started looking, and in the confusion, nobody else saw the air marshal struggling, except me, as he was pulled into the bathroom by the stewardess. Except she now looked more like a demon, with black scales on the forearms of her lethal hands and sharp claws. There was panic on the man's face, or maybe it was pain. I don't know. Just as the door shut, I could see the man's skin turning red as if it were being burned off by a torch, or whatever that thing pretending to be a stewardess was. Before I could tell anyone to look, the air marshal disappeared into the airplane bathroom. By this time, my wife had noticed my face and looked up front, but she didn't see anything. "Are you okay?" I tried to tell her something. It took the air marshal, but she just looked at me in confusion. And that was when the gunshot rang out in the cabin. The bullets began flying out of the bathroom from where the air marshal had been dragged. His screams were guttural. He must have gotten loose, but he never made it out. More bullets went off, and everyone scattered. Several shots hit the cockpit, and luckily they didn't penetrate the bulletproof door. Unfortunately, one of the bullets did shoot out the pressurized windows. The next few minutes were a blur. Everyone was panicking, and with no direction, everyone braced for the inevitable. I looked out the window just as we were about to hit. We were through the clouds, and what I was seeing wasn't New Hampshire. It looked like some kind of hellscape. Lava rivers and large mounds in the distance, horned monstrosities roaming the outskirts of the airport. The barbed wire fencing that lay more like fences made from rubber or skin, and the buildings were covered in ash and strange demonic symbols. After that, it was only blackness. I came to eventually, hanging and nearly falling out of my seat. I appeared to be only a few feet off the ground, and I was alone. My wife's seat was broken clean off. I can't see her, and I don't see anyone else living. I prepared myself and unlatched the seatbelt. I tucked and managed to save my 33-year-old ankles when I hit the ground. I stood up, letting my bearings hit me, when I finally got a look around and noticed there was no sun. It should have been there. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it looks like midnight out there. Alone and scared, I tried calling out, but I was afraid to draw the attention of those giant monsters I'd seen just before the crash. Just then, I heard a girl screaming. Instinct kicked in, and I ran to help. I jumped over the debris and body parts from the passengers. All I could think was that it might be Courtney, and I had to do something. I rounded one of the plane engines that was on fire, and I wish I didn't see what I had witnessed next. An early 20s Gen Z girl covered in dirt, her face cut and badly bleeding. So bad I couldn't tell if she still had her eyes. But then the worst of it finally hit me when I realized what she was doing. She was feeling for her legs, or her lack thereof. She cried out, screaming for her mother, while she grabbed at the stumps of what had been her legs. I have to admit I was scared. I was in shock. How could I help her? I didn't know, but I knew I couldn't let her suffer alone. I took a step when suddenly I heard another woman, but this one wasn't screaming. She was laughing. Suddenly, a beautiful, terrifying demon woman walked around the corner, and with her came 2 tiny, crawling demons. "Oh, my child, save your screams. We're just getting started." With that, she snapped her fingers, and I watched as the demons tore into the poor girl. Her screams drew more of the demon dogs. "The more you despair, the more you will suffer. Embrace the suffering, and you will be released from it." The girl cried as best she could as the monster tore into her throat, but with one last breath, she must have gave her what the demon wanted. Suddenly, they were surrounded in black smoke and disappeared. The demon dogs, the demon woman, and the girl, all gone. I was left alone among the debris, the death, the ash-filled air. I didn't know what to do. I found a place to hide. I thought this was hell. Found out later, it wasn't. After having a breakdown under the debris of the crashed plane and still having no idea if my wife was even alive, I had this weird feeling that I had to keep going. It just kept saying, keep alive, keep moving. I can hear those demon dogs coming. I need to be fast. Sometime after my encounter, I heard something loud and deep. It was familiar somehow, though. It sounded like an engine, a plane. I ran through piles of debris and burning cars, planes, cruise ships, and buses. I got to the top of the debris mound just in time to see a 747 punch through the clouded barrier. This one landed just like it was supposed to. I looked up and noticed flying demons scattering as the plane hooked the terminal gate. Just then, the hundreds of demons surrounding the tarmac shrieked like they were welcoming something. Just then, from a shadowy hole in the ground, a giant snake erupted. The giant snake-like creature slithered around the plane like a boa constrictor, preparing to suffocate its prey. The doors opened, and immediately I could hear people screaming for their lives. I watched as a humanoid demon dressed like a pilot in a torn uniform, with random horns tearing its suit of skin off. It was like it was wearing a costume. It started throwing passengers off the plane. Demon dogs and other emaciated humanoid demon things began to swarm the passengers. A middle-aged man in a $5,000 suit, he screamed as the creatures tore his clothes off and he was carried into the main terminal. He swung his suitcase like a weapon. Just before he disappeared, one of the smallest humanoid demons jumped up and bit down on his wrist, stopping him from injuring any of the rest of them with that metal suitcase. I could hear him scream even louder, begging for help and to be let go. Before he vanished into the terminal, I saw the little demon tear the guy's hand off. Was that where they took Courtney, I wondered? I navigated my way inside. I don't know why. I put myself through these sights of something in me just kept demanding that I move forward. Like I had to see it. I watched as all the passengers from the plane, buses, the people who had just got lost on car rides ended up here. They were sorted onto paths that were surrounded by barbed wire. Come on, you meat sacks, it's time to get sorted out. Which one of you is one of us, and which one of you is for the meat grinder? One of the sick-looking demons with a sharp pike yelled at these poor souls, shuffling them through the giant rotating spikes, just like TSA instructing passengers to go through security. Demon guards pushed each person towards the front of the line, where a larger demon would look at each person to classify them. Aviation, infantry, necrotics, this one has spirit. Training pits, we'll beat that out of you, or we'll eat you. The guy looked like a soldier type. Broad shoulders, tattoos, looked like someone from a movie, with the army guys in Benghazi. One by one, people were chosen for roles in Hell's forces. As far as I can tell, there was a small percent of prisoners that the demons didn't want anything to do with, which I thought was pretty weird. Wouldn't everyone make a good soldier? I never got my answer. One of the flying demons landed near the ventilation duct I was hiding in, and I needed to sneak away. I made my way through the vents. To my relief, nothing was in there with me. At least nothing that ever found me. Eventually, I found my way to the airport authority office. It looked guarded. Several bear-type looking guys and big old demons that guarded the door. Using the vents, I quietly snuck in and found what appeared to be a map with some demon casting a spell over the airport. On the giant omnidirectional map, I could see a bubble around the airport. At first I thought it was hiding this place. Whatever that thing in the airport authority office is, it's how they're cloaking the airport, and the demons are building an army with our own people. I don't know how, but somehow in this office I have signal. Maybe it's how no one knows this place is gone. I don't know. I don't know anything up until an hour ago. I didn't even believe in hell. If anyone gets this message, you need to tell everyone about this demon cloaking this place. If it's something more than turning people into demons, I don't know, but we have to save these people. Every plane that lands is either adding more soldiers to the enemy ranks or enslaving more innocent souls. The worst part is, the planes are leaving. Who's on them? I don't know, but they can't be human. I'm gonna keep exploring. I can't explain this feeling, but something is telling me that Courtney's not far. I'm gonna find out as much as I can and come back here to relay what I can. This has to be the start of something.
And you thought a regular trip to the airport was hell on earth. Think again. Coming up next, we have a man getting away to the woods, but his style of camping is a little different and a little detrimental, as we'll all see. So, let's learn about how I met the Dark Watchers.
I've been sitting on this for a little while, but I think it's time. This happened about 3 years ago. I was, without a doubt, the worst kind of hiker. You know those guys who are all leave no sign, bagging their garbage, burying their poop, cleaning up their campsite, respecting nature's natural beauty and all that? Yeah, that wasn't me. I liked camping. My parents liked camping. But there was always a mentality of the woods will take care of things. I watched my dad leave a whole cooler full of empty beer cans at the site one time when I was 8. We brought a couch with us on a camping trip one time, just because Dad knew of a ravine nearby. Broken fishing rods, left those by the creek. Garbage, right on the ground. Hell, we left a whole tent once because Dad couldn't get it back in the bag. We didn't use campgrounds either. Mom and Dad would pack up and find somewhere in the middle of nowhere and just live off the land for a couple of days, then leave their crap behind. I can't say that this is why I am the way I am. I know better than to litter and be a pig, but in my head, the woods will always take care of themselves. It's been here for millions of years. Why is my trash and stuff gonna mess with it? If my styrofoam cooler kills a couple of trees, then they didn't deserve to be there, right? That's what I thought, at least. I go camping about 3 times a year. The start of spring, the start of summer, and the end of summer. I live in California, so I always just pack up my pickup, get some food and beer and recreational greenery, and head out to somewhere remote. A buddy of mine from work hadn't shut up about this overlook an hour from the city, right outside the Santa Lucia mountain range, and I figured I'd go crash out there for a weekend. Unlike my parents, I'm not a living off the land kind of person. I brought food, I brought stuff, and I intended to do nothing but sit in the wilderness, sleep in my hammock, and get buzzed. I called out Friday and found the perfect spot by lunchtime. It was gorgeous, overlooking the valley and so remote that if I were to get really hurt, I'd probably die out here with no one the wiser. I set up my hammock, set out my fire logs with some water, just in case, and just kind of spread out a bit. I made some lunch, sandwiches, rolled a joint, and just kind of got mellow for a bit as the day rolled on. It was nice out here, just watching the clouds and listening to nature. I was soon pretty well lit, and the sun started creeping down as I set to lighting my fire. There was probably a burn ban in effect, but I had water, and I didn't care. Out here, no one was going to see me anyway, and I started roasting hot dogs as the sun cut a fantastic line across the sky. That was the first time I noticed them. I remember looking up and whispering, "Shit," as I mistook them for rangers or cops or something. They were just silhouettes on the ridge, not far from my camp, 3 or 4 of them, and they had these wide, flat-topped hats, like park rangers or the guy on the oatmeal box. I watched them for a minute, thinking I was busted, but they just stood there. They didn't move, they didn't call out, but I know they saw me. My fire had to be visible for a ways at this height, and the longer they stayed there, the more creeped out I felt. Why were they just standing there? If they wanted me to leave, then why not tell me to leave? I didn't know, but once the sun set, I noticed they had vanished and just kept an eye peeled. I had my gun, a big old .45, so I wasn't worried, but I suddenly wished I had a tent to sleep in instead of just a hammock. I sparked up again after eating a pack of dogs, though, and that took some of the edge off. Took any thought of the shadow guys out of my mind whatsoever. I dozed off in my hammock, but I dreamed about them that night, too. I dreamed that they were in my campsite, just standing around and watching me. They were like the outlines of people, like when someone stands in front of the sun and all you get is a burnt-out image of them. They didn't have any features, no eyes or anything, and I was frozen there as they looked at me. They didn't say anything. They just watched me, and it felt like being sleep paralyzed the whole time. I woke up after dawn, almost fell out of my hammock, and started making breakfast as I stirred up the ashes of last night's fire. I wondered if it had really been a dream or not, but I felt like it must have been. Why would they come out here not to say anything? All my stuff was there too, down to the hot dog wrappers I'd left on the ground next to the fire. I tossed it in absent-mindedly and ate eggs and ham. The ice was still holding out. It was spring and not too hot yet, so I decided to go for a forest pub crawl today. Translation, I put a bunch of beer into my backpack and walked out into the woods so I could have a drunk hike. I spent about 5 hours hiking in the woods, tossing my dead soldiers into the trees as I finished them. Some of them broke, most of them didn't, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. I hiked in the woods. I never saw anything. Wasn't like I spotted someone hiding behind a tree, but it was like deep pockets of shadows that shouldn't have been there. It was midday, the sun was high, and I should have had major visibility. Even so, I found myself looking around as the crawling feeling just got worse and worse. Some of it was being drunk in the hot woods with no water, and when I found a stream, I plunged my face into it to get some clarity. I drank a little. Dad always said running water was fine to drink from, and when something snapped not far behind me, I looked up like a zebra at a watering hole. I looked around, trying to find what was stalking me, but there was nothing, just the quiet forest and the gently rushing stream. No, I didn't believe that. I'd felt like I was stalked all day, and as I watched the trees, I felt sure that something moved out there. I got up and started running, the zebra analogy too hard to break, and I kept waiting for the claws to sink into me, the teeth to bite, the hot breath to fall on my neck. It was going to come at any minute. I could feel it, and when I tripped over a fallen log, I just lay there and waited for the end. It would get me now. It would get me, and I'd be dead. I'd be dead. Nothing happened. I lay there for about 10 minutes just knowing that it would get me when I moved, but it never came. When the ants started to bite my legs, I sat up and swiped at them. I'd fallen next to an anthill, and I had accidentally stomped on it in my haste, and they were mad as hell about it. I ended up going back to the creek to wash them off, a haphazard trip that took me another 10 minutes, and I was still looking around like a scared animal. I sat with my legs in the creek until they had stopped throbbing, and then made my miserable way back to camp. It was not as much fun walking back as it had been walking out, and I was jittery and tense the whole way. The sun was starting to slip down, and I absolutely didn't want to be out here when it got dark. Too many things could be crunching around out here in the dark. I made it back to camp before it got dark, and as I cooked my dinner, the sun started to ride low again. It was more hot dogs tonight, cooked over the fire, but I couldn't finish all of them. I was too scared to look away from the ridge, and I ended up burning more than one of them. They tasted fine either way, but I had eyes only for the shadows on the ridge. They had the same wide-brimmed hats. A few of them had canes, but none of them were really people. They were like shadows, the images burned at Hiroshima, the photo negatives that sometimes get burned into old photographs. All of them at once, and none of them at all. They just stood there, watching me. They didn't move. They didn't stir. And as the sun sank, I became colder and colder. I should have gone to my truck and left, but I didn't. I made myself put it out of my mind. I convinced myself that I was just being foolish. When it got dark, I got in my hammock and tried to get comfortable, but it wouldn't come. My leg hurt. I was sunburnt. I was hungover. I was dehydrated. I was. But ultimately, I was afraid. I was afraid that when I closed my eyes, they would get me. I was afraid they would just carry me off into the night and I'd never be seen again. They would find my truck and my campsite, but never me. Maybe, I thought as I finally nodded off, someone would look up one afternoon at sunset and see me on that ridge too, just watching. I must have fallen asleep, and I like to think I dreamed what came next. I want to, but I can't convince myself that I did. I woke up and saw them standing around me. I could see them, and not just the ones in front of the fire. They were darker than the night itself somehow, and they began to creep closer to me. Crept is the wrong word, though. They slid along the ground like ghosts in some of the horror movies I'd watched as a kid. They hemmed me in, my body shaking, but my voice stuck in my throat. I didn't dare move. I didn't dare speak. And as they knelt around me, I heard whispering. It was a terrible sound, and it follows me into sleep sometimes. You come here to the womb of creation and leave your waste. You are a brainless creature fit only to destroy things made by your betters. You burn the wood of a creature who has existed before you were more than a twinkling in your father's eye. You destroy a place that was new when this planet cooled. You throw your trash into a home shared by 100 billion organisms, and you claim to be superior here. The better. You are nothing. You will die and be forgotten. On and on and on. They whispered endlessly to me, telling me how worthless I was, how I was a nuisance and a nothing, and how I would never change. Then, one of them rose up above my hammock, his body seeming to hang over me, like a shadow cast from above. He looked like them, but he was clearly their boss or something, and when he brought the cane down on nothing but air, I heard it crack like a thunderbolt. Go back to your stinking pit, but be warned. The next time you come to our woods and ruin our place, you will not be allowed to scamper off so easily. You are a stunted thing who was taught badly, but ignorance is forgivable. If you persist in this folly, we will not be so kind again. Now go, it yelled, and I opened my eyes to find that it was morning. I was laying in my hammock, piss dribbling down my leg, and I knew that I better not be here when the sun came up. I cleaned up everything. I picked up all my garbage. I cleaned up my site. I poured water over the fire and mixed it with dirt like they had always said to on TV. Then I took everything with me, and I ran for the truck. That was Sunday, and I've been kind of afraid to leave my apartment. What if they're waiting out there for me? What if they find me slipping, or they don't like that I don't recycle or something like that? What if I offend them and they drag me back to the woods to be punished? That's part of why I'm writing this. If you're like me, someone who doesn't care about their mess or just leaves the woods wrecked, then watch out. Don't let the Dark Watchers catch you messing up their forest, because they do more than just watch. Don't let them see you slipping, or you might find out what sort of punishment awaits those who anger them.
It's always best to mind the rules of the woods if you're going to be spending time in Mother Nature's bounty, lest you become a permanent resident of that bounty. Our last story is a long one, but definitely a good one. Brought to us by Nick T.F. Burner. It's a story about a wife that goes for a little vacation and never comes back. So, let's hear a little more about how my wife went to the shore and didn't return.
I woke up on my couch this morning, and the first thing I noticed was the piercing headache that comes from a horrible hangover. Then I acknowledged that waking up on my couch, with the obvious signs of heavy drinking, instead of doing it in my bed with my wife peacefully sleeping beside me, was not exactly encouraging. So as I got up and went to clean myself up, I tried my best to remember everything that had taken place last night. As soon as I did, I felt guilty. My wife Sophia and I had a heated argument that ended when I eventually passed out on my couch from all the alcohol I had consumed. As soon as I stepped into our room, I noticed that she wasn't asleep on the bed like I had expected her to be. There was no sign of her, actually. No phone, no shoes, no purse, or any of her clothes hanging around the room. Nothing. Figured that maybe I had woke up too late and thought she had simply went out to grab lunch with friends. This theory was quickly buried when I checked the time on my phone. It was 9:20 a.m. This shook me up quite a bit. I didn't know where she was, or what she was doing at this hour after drunkenly telling her the most insulting and degrading things I could think of. Do you see where this is going? She could have spent the night revenge fucking some random loser for all I know. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to hug her and apologize for all the horrible things I had said to her. The guilt I was feeling was only worsened when I noticed her profile picture was missing from my contacts app, meaning she either removed it or had blocked me. The latter seemed like the most likely of the two options, as ever since we met, she had always kept the same picture of her and her twin sister Cassie. I figure I needed to clear my head before doing anything stupid, so I decided to step into the bathroom and take a shower. As soon as I did, I let out a huge sigh of relief when I saw a sticky note attached to the mirror. Hey Alex, I'm really sorry about last night. I know I was acting like a total maniac and provoked you into saying things you didn't mean. I want you to know that I'm not mad at you and that nothing is wrong. I just went out to the beach to take a walk on the shore. I would have told you all this in person, but it seemed you were pretty passed out, and I didn't want to wake you up. Anyway, I'll be back soon. Love you. I smiled as I picked up the note and read it. I couldn't help but think, though, that despite this obvious sign that it was just me overthinking the whole situation, something still felt wrong. I brushed it off and proceeded to take a nice, long, hot shower. I felt a lot better as soon as I stepped out. My hangover was improved significantly, and the stabbing sense of guiltiness was almost gone. I got dressed and quickly tried to call Sophia, but it went straight to voicemail. This just made that lingering sense of worry suddenly reawaken itself. Then again, the beach had pretty much no signal, so I didn't worry about it too much and decided not to act immediately. Big mistake. Minutes turned into hours as I desperately waited for her to arrive. All I could think about was her long, shiny blonde hair and her beautiful blue eyes. I soon realized it had been 4 hours since I picked up the note she'd left, which meant that she'd been away for a lot longer than that, since I had no idea when she'd left. She never spent that much time on the beach. So at about 1:30, I decided to leave my house and go look for her. I ran into my good friend Max on the way to the beach. He told me he had just left the surf shop and how excited he was about working on a custom board for one of his clients. He quickly noticed I wasn't exactly matching his energy and seemed pretty worried, asking me if anything was wrong and how he could help. That was classic Max. He was always there for his loved ones. He'd stick with you through thick and thin, no matter what. That's why I was really glad I had ran into him on this particular day. I needed that kind of support, now more than ever. I quickly explained the situation to Max, and his typical massive smile gradually turned into a serious expression as I let out my concern. He took a deep breath before speaking. Okay, I would have thought she'd just stay mad and crash somewhere, but that note really complicates everything. Maybe she actually is still mad at you and still crashed somewhere, but she left you that note so you wouldn't come looking for her. I wouldn't worry too much, man. She's probably at one of her friends' house talking shit about you right now. But that's how it goes with her, man. She's a drama queen. She wouldn't just leave you without a big final face-to-face, right? What he said did make sense, but it still had me worried. Yeah, exactly. She wouldn't just leave without saying anything. That's why I'm worried. What if she actually came here and something happened to her? Well, in that case, I'm here to help you look for her. Although, I really don't think she's been kidnapped or anything. That's insane. Trust me, she's probably at someone's house enjoying some time away from her psychotic husband. He let out a soft chuckle, but quickly turned serious again when he saw his joke hadn't amused me. "Look, man, if you want to help me look for her, I really appreciate it. If not, don't get in my way," I said with a stone-cold expression on my face. "Roger that," he said, and quickly ran back towards the surf shop. I assumed he was choosing the latter of the two options I gave him, and scoffed quietly as I arrived at the beach. I was mistaken. About 20 minutes after he left, I heard Max calling out for me. I was too focused on looking for any signs of Sophia to turn around immediately, but when I did, I was delighted to see my friend along with the entire staff of his surf shop making their way towards me. They were equipped with flashlights, binoculars, and even an automatic weapon, in case things went sour. I couldn't help but smile at the sight before me, and greet my friends with a hug. We wasted no time and immediately split up into 4 groups, walking around the beach and asking every pedestrian if they'd seen a blonde-haired woman in her mid-20s. We were met with mostly negative answers, until the sun started to set and our hopes of finding Sophia slowly disappeared with it. Before I knew it, it was already 7 p.m. We'd been asking around for any signs of my wife for more than 5 hours, and most of Max's team were starting to lose hope entirely. One of them suggested we call our search, and instead file a missing persons report with the local police. I stubbornly refused, noting that the local police are extremely incompetent, and missing person reports always lead to nothing. But deep down, I knew that was my best bet. Max quickly said, "I agree with Alex. The police won't do anything to help us. But Detective Hoffman might be a different story. I'll call him right now." I was confused by his statement. However, it gave me hope. Whoever this Detective Hoffman guy is, he could really help us right now. At least, help us more than the police would. Max quickly explained to me that Detective Hoffman is the client he talked about earlier. He was shopping for a birthday present to give his son, and a custom surfboard from Max's shop was what he chose. Max told me that they had become great friends, which by his standard most likely meant that they were mild acquaintances. But whatever kind of friendship they had was irrelevant. What mattered was that this guy was a trained detective who also worked as a private investigator. After a short phone conversation with Max, he agreed to help me find my wife in exchange for a hefty discount on his custom board. I was so thankful that Max actually agreed to this, but hey, that's Max for you. Detective Hoffman and I got in touch as soon as he ended his conversation with Max. We agreed to meet at my house the same night, so I said goodbye to Max and his crew, thanking them and especially Max for all their help. I quickly made my way back home. I still had a sliver of hope in me that as soon as I walked in the house, Sophia would be right there waiting for me. Of course, that wasn't the case, but my disappointment was short-lived as about 10 minutes after I arrived, I got a knock on the door from Detective Hoffman. I opened the door and greeted a tall but slender man into my home. He gave me a firm handshake and asked if he could come inside. I showed him in, and he immediately took off his large black trench coat to reveal a minimalist yet elegant white shirt and red tie. He made his way into my kitchen and asked me if I had any bourbon. I was a bit shocked by his confidence. Usually I would be the one offering booze to my guest. I didn't have bourbon, but I did have half a bottle of scotch left, so I offered it to him and he gladly accepted. I took out 2 glasses and handed them to him. He served a generous amount of brown liquor for both of us, put them on the kitchen table, and invited me to sit down. Again, his confidence was definitely a bit shocking to me, and I definitely could have mistaken it for arrogance. I decided to keep these thoughts to myself, though. The only thing that mattered to me was finding Sophia. "Listen, Alex, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I need you to be 100% honest with me if you want us to get anywhere. Understood?" "Yeah, I understand." "Fantastic. Now I want you to know that we have a confidentiality agreement in place, meaning anything you say cannot legally be shared to anyone. Understand?" "Yeah, I understand," I replied, definitely getting a bit nervous when he asked me that. I was afraid of what he might ask next. "Did you murder, attempt to intimidate, or physically or psychologically harm Sophia Adkisson?" I was lost for words, froze up. This Sherlock Holmes doppelganger thinks I killed my own wife. "No, of course not. How dare you even suggest something like that in my own home? I can't begin to explain how—" "No need to get defensive, Alex. I just need to have a full understanding of the situation so I can make an informed decision on how to proceed. I'm not suggesting anything. Tell me about Sophia. Did you notice any change in character in the days leading up to her disappearance? Did she show any signs or desires to terminate your relationship? Is she closer to any of her relatives or friends than she is to you? I thought for a few seconds, and then began to tell him about our big fight. I was drunk, and thought it would be somehow acceptable to demand she stop seeing her twin sister Cassie so often. I hate to admit that I was jealous, but I was. I was jealous that my wife was spending so much time with her sister. God, I was such an idiot. I told Hoffman about Cassie. They were extremely close, but oddly enough, I never got to spend much time with her. Sure, I knew who she was, and I'd seen her around sometimes, but I never got the chance to properly introduce myself to her. The closest I ever got was at my wedding, when she congratulated me and Sophia, and we exchanged a few words of gratitude, but that was really it. I was bothered by the fact that my wife spent so much time with someone who was practically a stranger to me, even though I had absolutely no right to feel that way, since they had literally known each other since birth. I understand. Do you happen to know where this individual resides at? Yeah, she lives about 4 blocks away. I didn't entirely understand the purpose of Hoffman's question, but I felt certain he would elaborate. Good. I'd like to speak with her immediately. I'll wait for you outside by my vehicle. He quickly stood up and grabbed his trench coat before stepping outside. I was a bit shocked by this, but I remembered my goal of finding Sophia, so I followed behind him and made my way to his black SUV. The drive over to Cassie's house was quiet and rather uncomfortable, but as soon as we got there, he handed me some sort of tape recorder and a pair of earphones. I'm going in alone, but I need you to listen carefully to everything she says. Try and make connections between anything you learn and everything you already know. But I need you to stay cool and composed, Alex. I will pressure her heavily, so it's more than likely that Cassie will disclose some information that's new to you. But no matter how angry it makes you, you have to stay here, and you have to stay focused. Understand? This shook me up a lot. I was not ready to find out what Sophia had been hiding from me, but I was certain that I was going to hear it anyway. Hoffman is intimidating, to say the least, and I just know that if there's truly a big secret that Sophia had trusted Cassie with, Hoffman would be able to get it out of her with ease. I observed anxiously from the vehicle as Hoffman made his way to Cassie's house. It was 8:21 p.m. when he gave the door 4 firm, loud knocks. He was about to knock for a 5th time when a short, blonde-haired woman greeted him with a confused expression on her face. Good evening, Miss Atkinson. My name's Detective Mark Hoffman, and I'm here to ask you a few questions regarding the disappearance of your sister, Sophia Atkinson. Can I come in, or would you prefer I take your statement from outside your residence? That was a sneaky trick by Hoffman. Casey wasn't legally obligated to tell him anything, but his concise and confident demeanor would make her think she was. I told you, this guy was good. Sure, Mr. Detective. Please come in. Hoffman took a glance at me in the car before calmly walking into Casey's house. I heard a loud beep noise coming from the tape recorder-esque device that he had handed me a moment before. He just activated a wireless microphone hidden in his tie. The door closed and my visual presence was gone, but thanks to that little microphone, I could still hear everything that was going on inside that house. Wow, okay, I didn't even know she was missing before you came here. When did this happen? She asked, genuinely terrified. God, her voice sounded just like Sophia's. I'm not sure you understand the dynamic here, Miss Atkinson, but I'm here to ask you some questions, not answer them. Oh, I understand, Mr. Detective. Sorry, how can I help you? Think of this as an interview. Whatever you say won't help or hurt anyone but yourself. So I would advise you to answer each of the following questions honestly and to the best of your knowledge. Understand? Yes, Detective. I'm sorry. I couldn't help but feel bad for Casey. The girl was probably relaxing in her bed, and suddenly she learned that her sister was missing, and that she was considered somewhat of a suspect. Or at least, that's how Hoffman made it seem. She sounded so scared and vulnerable. Please, take a seat. Yes, sir. Miss Atkinson, do you consider Mr. Alex Davis a friend of yours? I felt a chill run down my spine when I heard my name being mentioned. Well, sort of, yeah, I mean, he's my sister's husband. Obviously, I care about him and stuff, but we're not, like, super close friends or anything. Did he do something to Soph? It's a yes or no question, Miss Atkinson. Shall I repeat it for you? Hoffman shot the question back without even acknowledging her answer or her injury. No, I guess I don't consider him a friend, she said with as much composure as her voice was capable of. That stung. I mean, I could have probably guessed she'd say that. She'd probably also assume I had something to do with Sophia going missing, but it still felt bad. Hoffman just barely started, and I already wanted to step out of the car and go talk to her myself. This wasn't going to end well. Did Sophia Atkinson show any sign of being mistreated by Mr. Davis? Not mistreated exactly, but she did on occasions express being unhappy with the state of their marriage. What? What occasions? What the fuck was she talking about? I wanted to go in there and find out more, but I stayed calm, just like Hoffman had told me to do. Please go into detail about these occasions. What exactly did she feel unhappy about? Well, she sometimes talked about how Alex had a really bad temper, and I can assume he's probably an alcoholic from all the stories Sophia told me. She felt really upset whenever Alex drank more than he should have, because that's when he really lost his mind, according to her. That answer made me lose it. Why did Sophia talk to her about me? I was growing more and more impatient with every second that went by. I wanted to go in there so bad. And could it possibly be that Mr. Davis had one of his outbursts in the days leading up to Sophia's disappearance? Oh, definitely. It's more than possible. I think it's very likely, actually. He did have one of those outbursts quite often, according to my sister. I punched the glove box and gritted my teeth when I heard that. I knew it was true, but it hurt me more than it angered me. Did Sophia ever consider ending their marriage, Miss Davis? Yes, on many occasions, but she expressed a concern for her well-being if she did. She was scared of what Alex might do afterwards. I sat there and seethed. What the hell? Cassie was literally turning me into the prime suspect of this case, with the guy I had hired right there. I couldn't sit here like an idiot and take this much longer. Did Sophia have a backup plan, if you will, Miss Davis? I didn't even want to hear what Cassie had to say about that. Sort of. She was going to meet up with a painter she met on the beach. That was supposed to happen a few days ago, but she canceled on him. She told me she just couldn't do that to Alex, and she felt super guilty later. I was simultaneously relieved and completely enraged when I heard the answer. What painter? How could Sophia even consider cheating on me with some fucking painter? And a painter she had met on the beach, for God's sake? Probably some junkie who makes $2 an hour selling his shitty drawings to people who just feel bad for him. But at least she came to her senses, right? Please elaborate on this painter individual. What is his name and where does he reside? His name is Jamie. I can't seem to remember his last name, though. Maybe she didn't even mention it to me. As for the second question, I have no clue where he lives. But he works at the beach in a big blue tent by the main bar. Fucking loser, I whispered to myself. To the best of your knowledge, how did Jamie feel about Sophia canceling their date? He didn't take it well. From what I know, he tried to get in contact with Sophia a lot. She even blocked his number and started calling him from a different phone. It got really bad, so bad that Sophia had to change her number to avoid him. She lost all of her contacts because of this. Oh, that explained the whole missing profile picture thing. I wasn't sure how to feel. And did he try to contact Sophia in person? Maybe show up at her house on occasions? I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me if he did. And could a face-to-face confrontation between the two of them have led to Jamie harming Sophia in any way? Gosh, maybe. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Oh my God. Casey sounded worried when she said that. I should have been worried too in hindsight, but then and there I felt like I was losing my damn mind. I wanted to have a chat with this Jamie guy, maybe even stab him to death and throw his body in the ocean. That's all I've got for you, Miss Atkinson. Thank you very much for your time. No problem, Detective. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help. It sounded like Hoffman was making his way out of Casey's house, and sure enough, I saw him walk out with a blank expression on his face, and start to walk towards me in the car. He stepped back in and began to drive back to my house, without saying a word. It was now 9:08 p.m. When we arrived, he gestured for me to unlock the door, and as soon as I did, he walked inside, no hesitation, and made his way to my kitchen to pick up a still full glass of whiskey and down it in one gulp. I'm really nervous about this Jamie guy. He gives me the heebie-jeebies. That was the most informal thing Hoffman had ever done and said since I met him. I quickly snapped back to my senses and replied, "Yeah, Detective, I feel the same way. I want to kill that guy right now." "Don't worry, I do too. I would go over and question him right now, but it's late, and I imagine he's probably gone. First thing tomorrow, I'll pay him a visit in his little tent." It seemed the alcohol had really loosened Hoffman up. I thanked him for his help and wished him a good night. He then firmly shook my hand and handed me his business card. I realized I didn't even have his number yet. and I had contacted him through Max's phone. But that issue was now resolved. He made his way out of my house. Thanks for the drink, by the way. Take care of yourself, Alex. I'll see you tomorrow. Then he stepped into his car and was gone. Wow, a cop drinking and driving. I never thought I'd see that. I waved him goodbye and closed the door. I immediately collapsed onto the couch and started crying in rage. Whoever this Jamie guy was, and whatever he looked like, I was gonna fuck him up. In the middle of my breakdown, I decided to call Max. He almost instantly picked up, and we shared a short but meaningful conversation. Hey bro, how'd it go with Hoffman? Man, that guy is a complete badass, isn't he? I imagine you already figured that out, though. Did you figure out what happened to Soph? His demeanor did a complete 180 when he heard I was still weeping with tears of rage. Oh shit, I heard him whisper, his tone terrified. I told him about Hoffman's chat with Casey, and especially about Jamie the painter. Dude, I know that guy. He bought a few beanies and ball caps from my shop before. His tone was uncharacteristically enraged for Max. What does he look like? I desperately asked. Not gonna look great after these fists get their hands on him, buddy. I urged Max not to do anything. Hoffman was gonna go question him first thing in the morning, and that was final. Max sounded a little disappointed at me denying him the opportunity to beat Jamie's ass. But he was smart about it. He promised not to do anything directly, but he did say that he and his staff were going to keep an eye out for him. I didn't contest that, as I figured a few extra pairs of eyes couldn't hurt. I thanked him before hanging up, downing the glass of whiskey Hoffman had served me a few hours ago, and passing out on the couch. I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was a text from an unknown number. Good morning, Alex. It's Detective Hoffman. I have many things to share with you, but one is definitely more urgent than the rest. Please listen to the following audio files. The text had a 6-minute audio file attached, so I curiously grabbed a pair of earphones and started to listen. It seemed that Hoffman was interrogating someone. Mr. Jamie Watkins? Mr. Tall, Angry British Guy? I guessed that the last bit was Jamie's voice. Good morning, Mr. Watkins. My name is Detective Mark Hoffman, and I'm here to ask you a few questions regarding the disappearance of Sophia Adkisson. I could hear a light scoff coming from Jamie. Then he stayed silent for a few seconds before speaking again. I have no idea what you're talking about, Detective. Frankly, Mr. Watkins, I know that's not true, so I'm going to remind you that if you choose to lie again during this statement, you can and will be charged with misleading an investigation. Hoffman sounded like he was losing his cool a little bit, which was definitely out of character for him. And frankly, Mr. Detective, I'm not obliged to tell you anything, so I think I would rather have you stop wasting my time and stop drawing attention away from my work. Can't you see I'm working on a new piece here? God, you cops are such a pain in the ass. You are correct, Mr. Watkins. You are obliged to tell me nothing, though it may be in your best interest to tell me what you know. Hoffman angrily replied, and I could hear the sound of a handgun being rustled against his belt. He probably flashed the gun at Jamie in an attempt to intimidate him. I learned it clearly didn't work as soon as Jamie spoke again. Wow, yeah, that gives me even less reason to want to talk to you, and more reason to ask you to leave. If you do so right now, maybe I won't even tell your boss, Sheriff Stratham, that you literally just threatened me with a weapon. How does that deal sound, Mr. Marky Mark? I do not work under Sheriff Stratham, but thanks for the warning, Jamie. I imagine this would be an appropriate moment to disclose the fact that I've already gathered enough evidence to put you under arrest for kidnapping and possible murder. But hey, you should definitely continue to lie and provoke me. I wanted to believe Hoffman was lying when he said that. I just didn't want to believe it was possible that my Sophia had been kidnapped, much less murdered. Ha! Why haven't you arrested me yet then, asshole? Jamie sounded completely unbothered by the threat. Because I want to help you, Jamie. I can help you if you help me. Tell me what you know about Sophia's whereabouts, and I promise I'll make sure that you don't ever see the inside of a jail cell. Jamie stayed quiet for an uncomfortable amount of time, before he let out a light chuckle and said, All right, look, I was supposed to come over to her house one night when her husband was away, but then she rescheduled our little date to yesterday morning. I was speechless. I thought Sophia had canceled their date, but she met him the day she went missing? That was not looking good. Why would Cassie lie? Maybe she was being honest and Sophia lied to her about Jamie? Maybe it's fucking Jamie who's lying. I definitely wanted to believe the latter possibility. And did you see her yesterday morning, Mr. Watkins? Yeah, I did. We went on a trip to Malu Island to grab lunch and a few drinks. That's all I know, I swear. Malu Island was a small but beautiful section of land about a 20-minute boat ride away from the town. Please, go into further details about this trip, Hoffman said. Well, nothing sexual or even romantic took place. We met at the shore at about 8:30 and bought 2 tickets from Maru Island. We didn't really do anything major once we got there. We just talked for a while and shared a few drinks at the main bar when she suddenly stood up and went to the bathroom. That's the last time I saw her. She went to the bathroom at the bar and never came back? Hoffman asked with a distrustful tone. Yeah, she wanted about 20 minutes, and when I figured she just stood me up, I got up and left. Hoffman took a deep breath before speaking again. Let's talk about you for a second. Do you work here at the beach full time, selling your art? Is that your main source of income? Correct, Jamie said confidently. And where do you currently reside? I live in the trailer home just outside the area. It's maybe 10 blocks away from here. I'll write down the address. Very well, Mr. Watkins. I will not be taking any further questions from you at this time. However, I have a feeling we'll be seeing each other soon. The record ended with that. I felt more confused than enraged. Clearly someone was lying, and I desperately needed to know who. I guess I got caught up in this in my own head, because without really paying attention, I almost unconsciously grabbed for the bottle of scotch. Just as I was about to give in to my alcoholism, I was brought back to my senses by the sound of anxious knocking on my door. It was Max. My friend greeted me with one of his signature comfort hugs and quickly made his way to my kitchen as I closed the door behind us. Dude, I got some news and you're gonna want to hear it, he said as he opened my fridge and tossed me a beer can. I was curious to hear what he had to tell. Try to calm down, all right? One of my cashiers, Jesse, told me just now that he saw that Jamie guy sneaking into his tent with a big black trash bag. It looked like whatever was in it, it was moving. I felt a chill run down my spine as I heard that. Could it be? Max and I devised a plan to catch Jamie red-handed. We were going to keep a close eye on him all day long, and when he finally decided he was done selling his drawings for the day, we were going to follow him in Max's car. The stage was set. Max and I were poised on the roof of his surf shop with a pair of binoculars in hand. And sure enough, there he was. He was lounging on a folding chair inside of his ever-so-charming blue tent with his paintings on display like they were the lost works of Da Vinci. I really can't understand why he was still there. It was 5:08 p.m., and by the look of it, every potential client of his already left the beach. Plus, it's not like anybody in their right mind would pay the ridiculous prices he was charging for his pieces of art. Maybe he didn't arrive at the beach so early and leave so late to sell his drawings. Maybe he did it to scout out victims, to get close to vulnerable people, without them suspecting anything. Maybe that's how he got my Sophia. I was lost in my thoughts when a firm tap on my shoulder brought me back to my senses. Max pointed towards the tent as he quickly jumped from the rooftop and unlocked his car. Dude, look, he's leaving. Hurry the hell up or we're going to lose him. I quickly followed behind him and got in the passenger seat as fast as I could. Max started driving as soon as I'd closed the door, trying to keep an eye on Jamie's white van. He managed to get behind him without causing any suspicion, but I could tell Max and I felt equally as confused when, instead of turning right, away from the Bay Area and towards where the trailer homes he had told Hoffman about were, he took a left towards the wealthier side of town. We followed close behind as the white van made its way into an old garage, just outside of Springfield, the neighborhood home to the most luxurious vacation homes and most of the stunning apartment complexes in the area. We waited outside the garage for about 5 minutes, when suddenly Jamie drove out of the garage in an insanely over-the-top red sports car. It looked like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto. Max let out an audible gasp of pure shock. I instead stayed silent for a while as we followed that ridiculously expensive car. Holy shit, how much do you think that thing's worth? I don't know, man. Like a couple of million at least. But the real question is, how the fuck did he pay for that? Maybe he stole it? I don't know. There's no way he paid for that. I mean, I've never seen anyone buy his shitty paintings. Max let out a soft chuckle in reply. Dude, Alex, you're such a gullible goofball. I mean, it's obvious this whole painter thing is complete bullshit. This guy doesn't live in a trailer home, and he most definitely doesn't make a living selling those paintings on the beach. He's hiding something, and we're going to find out exactly what it is. But that doesn't make any sense. If you were a millionaire, why the hell would you pretend to be a junkie? Surely it would be the other way around, right? Well, maybe he doesn't want people to know he's a millionaire. But why? If I was a millionaire, I would be delighted to let people know. Why would anyone not want to take credit for that? That's exactly what we're here to find out, dude, Max said confidently. Earlier that day, before my friend and I had decided to go on this little investigation, I got a text from Hoffman. Alex, I should tell you what I've been up to since our last interaction. I've decided that in order to eliminate all doubt regarding Mr. Watkins' supposed encounter with your wife, I had to investigate Malu Island. So I did, and I discovered absolutely nothing that could connect Mr. Watkins to the disappearance of your wife. Although on second thought, I think it would be convenient if you took a look for yourself. Perhaps the two of us should travel there tomorrow morning and give the island another sweep. But to be honest with you personally, I believe that the supposed encounter never took place there, or at least not in the way that Mr. Watkins described it to me. I can't describe how uncomfortable this individual makes me. I have really, really bad feelings about him. I'll pick you up at your house tomorrow morning, just after I pay our little friend another visit. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex. Take care of yourself. The red sports car finally stopped, pulling into the driveway of a home I would only describe as surreal. Imagine the kind of property that the Wolf of Wall Street would own if he never got caught by the FBI, and times it by 10. Jamie calmly stepped out of the luxury vehicle and watched as two muscular men dressed in tuxedos greeted him, and one of them proceeded to park the car in the home's private garage. All Max and I could do was watch in disbelief as the scene before us unfolded. The house had a meticulously designed security system. It was no joke. There were cameras everywhere, at least 20 other unnecessarily jacked security guards dressed in tuxedos, a massive electric gate, about 15-foot-tall fence. Of course, because why not? There was a frigging sniper on the mansion's rooftop. It looked like a supervillain's hideout straight out of a video game. After analyzing our situation, Max and I quickly figured out that our options were quite limited. We only had two, actually. Plan A, go home, or Plan B, die. Since we're not completely out of our minds, we decided to choose the first option and leave the investigation work to a professional, like our friend Detective Mark Hoffman, for example. We drove back to the surf shop and said our goodbyes for the day, with a bittersweet feeling. We basically had no progress, and we had made nothing towards finding Sophia. We were losing valuable time, and in this particular situation, it could be the difference between life and death. But hey, at least we didn't attempt to break into a deranged billionaire's house, right? When I finally got home, the loneliness hit me harder than it ever had. My wife had been missing for more than 2 days, and so far, all I've done about it is find out that she met up with a billionaire pretending to be a loser. She could be dead right now, or maybe she's still alive and in desperate need of some help. And yet here I am, at home, alone, doing absolutely nothing to help her. I tried to change that by calling Hoffman and explaining everything Max and I had seen. I also sent him some photos I took of Jamie's car and the house. To my surprise, Hoffman seemed quite unbothered by this. He assured me that he'll get something valuable out of Jamie tomorrow morning, and wished me a good night. I'm ready to do something about it. I'm ready to step up for Sophia. Tomorrow, Hoffman and I will investigate Malu Island, and I swear on Sophia's name that I will not go home empty-handed. I will find something that can allow Hoffman to legally search Jamie's home, and when it's over, she'll be right here, alive, and ready to finally come home with me. I miss her a lot. I actually woke up at a reasonable time for once. It was 7:30 a.m., and I was ready to finally do something meaningful. I'd called Hoffman the night before, and asked him if I could be present for the second interrogation of Jamie. I wanted to analyze everything about his demeanor, any signs of guilt in his body language, or manner of speech. I was going to notice it. Hoffman knocked on my door, and we decisively made our way into his black SUV. This made me reminiscent about the time he had interrogated Casey. The anxiousness and the uneasy feeling was exactly the same. I was excited to find out more about Sophia's disappearance, but absolutely terrified about what exactly I might find out. Hoffman broke the silence. Same thing as before. We'll use the same wireless microphone technology we did last time, and the rules are still the same. If I'm being honest, I have no idea what I'll be able to get out of Jamie, so please keep a cool head. This will either go extremely well or terribly wrong. Whatever happens, just stay here and do not leave the vehicle for any reason. Understood? Yeah, thanks, Detective. We pulled up to the beach, and Hoffman parked the SUV in a position that would give me a clear line of sight for the tent, but far enough away to keep the vehicle from raising any suspicions. Hoffman handed me the same tape recorder thing as before, and gave me a pat on the shoulder as he stepped out of his car. I think up to that point, I had never seen him nervous. Oh wow, look who decided to show up. My good old pal Sherlock Holmes. I missed you, buddy. What have you been up to lately? Jamie said, with an infuriating grin on his face. Show's over, Watkins. I now have conclusive evidence of your little side job, or side life, I should say. I imagine you wouldn't like it too much if that got out, would you? You'd probably lose a few clients if that happened. Jamie literally burst out laughing. How can someone be so relaxed when there's a trained detective interrogating them? Man, you crack me up, Mark. You're one hilarious dude. I'll give you that. I just wish you were as good a detective as you are a clown. You're facing multiple charges that could lead to more than 60 years in prison. Make that a life sentence when I connect you to the Adkins murder in a few days. How exactly is that hilarious to you? He's calling it a murder now. God, I really do hope this is a scare tactic. I can't even grasp the thought of my wife being dead. Murder? Is that how it is now, Big Shot? You don't even have a body, asshole. I literally own the police force, Mark. I'm perfectly aware of all your little scare tactics. You're pathetic. He wore a disgusted smirk on his face, but his smugness was still intact. Well, at least I tried, Hoffman said, reaching into his belt. He took out his gun and fired a bullet into Jamie's foot. Holy shit, this was insane. Jamie screamed out in pain, but his agony quickly turned into laughter. How could that be? The guy literally just got shot at, and he somehow found it funny. And so the plot thickens. Did you enjoy your little field trip, Mark? Jamie was now in a full-on fit of laughter. There's something seriously wrong with this guy. You sent me to Malu Island to find nothing. How funny. Hoffman cocked his gun and aimed it at Jamie's foot once again. You were wasting my time, so I thought I'd waste some of yours, Jamie said, still laughing hysterically. Hoffman then fired another shot into Jamie's foot, but this time around there was apparently no pain at all. In fact, it actually seemed to make Jamie laugh harder. Tell me what really happened to her, or it's your head next, Hoffman said, his weapon still firmly in hand. What really happened to her? Okay, what really happened to her is that I took her to my house and fucked her brains out. She begged me to stay, but I kicked her out as soon as I was done with her. Then after that, she probably killed herself when she realized she had to go back to Alex Davis. Jamie's fit of laughter got louder and more obnoxious with every word that came out of his mouth. I officially lost my mind when he said that. I didn't care anymore. I was getting out of this car and walking up to the scene. I was going to take Hoffman's gun away from him and put a bullet through Jamie's skull. I was in the middle of unbuckling my seatbelt to do just that when Jamie spoke again. That's priceless, Mark. If only you could see the look on your face. This play just keeps getting better and better. Perhaps it's time for the final curtain, but it seems like all the actors are yet to arrive. Jamie actually stopped laughing. His demeanor took a sharp turn into something a lot more menacing. You know exactly who I'm talking about. That idiot you call your client, sitting in your car like a coward. Listening to me right now, I bet. Come out and play, Alex. I wanted to go. I most definitely would have done so if I didn't notice that Jamie had some kind of assault rifle hidden under one of his paintings. So instead, I stayed in the car, like a coward. At this point, I hated myself more than I hated Jamie. Hoffman noticed it too, and he carefully walked back to the car, still facing Jamie, with his firearm in hand. He got in and drove away. That somehow went even worse than anything I could have imagined. Well, goddamn, now we're dealing with an actual criminal. I told you this guy was bad news, Alex. I had this weird feeling about him ever since day one. Hey, let's not waste time. Let's go to Malu. And that's what we did. As soon as Hoffman and I stopped off at the boat rental, we immediately started scouring every little corner of Malu. Not just the place that Jamie mentioned like Hoffman did last time. Every bar, every restaurant, shop, public area, we went there, trying to discover any clues that could lead us to the truth. Our efforts were seemingly worthless, until we decided to investigate that old, rusted-looking well located on the most desolate area of the island. I really wish we hadn't done that, but in a way, I'm also glad we did. My sanity could not have handled a single additional ounce of uncertainty, so discovering the truth, as absolutely heartbreaking as it was, felt oddly rewarding. We opened the well, and our eyes met with nothing but a pile of darkness. However, the smell was a completely different story. The well emanated a pungent odor, the scent of rotting flesh and solidified blood. When Hoffman lit his flashlight to reveal the source of that disgusting smell, I threw up in my mouth. My eyes stared in disbelief as my chest sunk like it never had before. What we had discovered was Sophia's corpse, staring back at us with those lifeless eyes. To this day, that sight keeps me up at night. I just can't get it out of my head. The way her mouth was frozen open, her hands rested stiff on what used to be her thighs. In that moment, I couldn't do anything more than just stand there, too numb to even react. I felt the urge to scream or cry, but My body just didn't respond. Hoffman and I just froze there. I can't even tell you how long. Time just didn't feel real at that moment. Nothing about that sensation seemed real to me. It was a terrible nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. It was, without a doubt, the worst day of my life, and I can say with certainty that I doubt there will be a worse one. If by any chance Jamie Watkins happens to be reading this entry, let me just tell you, the murder case coming your way should be the least of your worries. If you're unlucky enough to run into me one day, I swear that I will put you through the most excruciating pain that the human body can handle. I don't give a shit if we're in public. I will tear the flesh off your bones, rip apart every single one of your organs, one by one. You took my life away from me. You took the only thing I had. You took her away from me. I swear to God that one day I will do the same. I don't care how much I have to sacrifice. I will go to any lengths to destroy you and everything you have, even if it costs me my life. Take this as a friendly warning if you value your life. The best thing you can do is just plead guilty and hide in a prison cell like the dirty rat you are for the rest of your miserable existence. But even that won't help you. I'll find you, and I will make you pay for what you did to me. It's been a year since the events of my last entry took place. This time has been very uneventful, but there's still some important things that perhaps I should share. Jamie Watkins got acquitted of first-degree murder. I don't even care anymore. I could see it coming from a mile away. We didn't have any DNA or any piece of real evidence, just the audio recording from Hoffman's interrogation, and those got easily shut down. Since there were no witnesses of the interrogation besides me and Hoffman, the judge didn't even allow us to play it for the jury, and even if he did allow it, Hoffman literally shot Jamie twice during the interrogation, so it would have done more harm than good anyway. Again, I don't care anymore. I learned the hard way that enough money can get you out of damn near anything. I distanced myself from almost every person in my life who was there for the nightmare. I only really stayed in touch with two people, Max and Cassie. Max is my best friend, and he's been incredibly supportive through all this, always there when I need someone to listen to my drunken rants. And Cassie, well, I get the feeling that I like her a lot more than she likes me. I've stopped by her house quite a few times, and although she always allows me to come inside, she definitely seems very uncomfortable around me. But for some reason, this doesn't really bother me. I feel safe when I'm around her. It's a feeling that I can't replace with anyone else. When I talk to her, I feel like Sophia's the one listening to me. Her facial expressions, her body language, her smile, even her scent just makes me feel at home. I suppose it makes sense, since she's my wife's twin sister, but there's still something special about Cassie that I can't really explain. Max has been trying his best to keep me away from her. He says she's preventing me from moving on. He also told me that I'm not trying to replace one twin with another, and that it's disgusting that I would even think of it. I think he's right. I know I have to do something about it. It isn't right, and it isn't fair to Cassie. Max told me about a friend of his, a middle-aged lady who used to work as a cashier. Her name is Monica. She quit a few months ago in order to set up her own spiritual shop, and apparently it's been a huge success. Her clients are always satisfied, and she seems to magically get rid of people's problems. Just what I need. I decided to give it a try because, why not? It was going to be expensive for sure, but I figured it's better to spend my money on something that could help me, instead of buying nothing but pre-made food and whiskey. I drove there at night. Usually I'd be playing some music, but ever since the whole thing happened, I can't seem to enjoy anything anymore. Every song I used to listen to reminds me of her. Same with every movie and every show. Hopefully this Monica person can help me live a normal life again. Although I do have some serious doubts. Most places that sell spiritual items end up being a complete scam, at least from my experience. Hopefully this changes my mind. I arrived at the shop about 15 minutes after I left my house. Monica greeted me at the door and invited me inside. "You must be Max's friend, Alex, right?" she said with a big smile. "Yeah, that's me. I don't really know why I'm here exactly. There's something seriously wrong with me, so I'm hoping you could help me fix it." "Yes, Alex. Max told me all about you. I'm going to examine you, if that's okay. Please, take a seat." Examine me? What does she mean by that? I probably would have asked her to explain this examination of hers, but I really wasn't in the mood, and I didn't want to cause a scene. So I did exactly as she told me and sat down on the old brown armchair accommodated behind the counter. She then placed some sort of stone on my forehead, gently holding it still in her cold hand. After a few seconds, she removed her hand with the stone still in it, and just stayed quiet for a while. It was maybe close to a full minute before she spoke again. "You're broken. Something really traumatic happened, and you simply haven't been able to get over it. You're lost. You feel like you need to replace something that you've lost. But in reality, you don't know what you want. Give me a few minutes, please." Yeah, well, no shit. I think I already knew that, Monica. So far, this isn't quite worth the $500 fee she's charging me. Or that's what I thought, at least. She stepped into the back room of her shop, and shortly after, came out with a melting pot and a few plastic bags with powdered materials that seemed similar to cooking condiments, although I knew they were obviously not as they appeared to be. She then took the stone she had previously placed on my forehead and started to melt it. It was actually a soul crystal, as she called it. She started carefully measuring out and incorporating the powders into a hot goo. She kept on adding and mixing for about 5 minutes until she finally acknowledged me. She asked me to come closer as she did so. Without any warning, she took my hand and pinched my finger with a small needle she had, and as soon as a drop of blood splashed into the mixture, she spoke again. She softly whispered in a kind of pseudo-Latin, with her eyes closed, and then poured out the hot mixture onto a steel compass to create the needle. I hadn't understood the words, but what really caught my eye was the compass. Why did it need my blood? And why didn't she tell me anything before doing that? Monica handed it to me and briefly explained its function. "This is what we call a soul compass. Follow the needle, and it will lead you to the thing you desire most, above anything else. Maybe finding what you truly need can help you handle your grief a little better. If not, I'm always here to help." I thanked her and left. This got me really curious, so I decided to follow the needle until it stopped moving. It led me to Cassie's house. Don't panic, I thought to myself. Maybe it's leading me to something inside of Cassie's house, not Cassie herself. I don't know why, but I thought it'd be a great idea if I waited for her to leave her house so I could take a look around. Why do I keep putting myself in dangerous situations? Maybe that's why I so often see things I'm not supposed to see. At about 8 p.m., a little over an hour after I got there, I saw her leaving her house all dressed up for a night out on the town. But she was with Max? Why? I saw the compass needle follow her every step as she walked with my friend. At first I felt bad about breaking into her house, but now I needed to find out why she'd been hanging out with Max. I needed to know more. I just couldn't resist. I stepped out of my car and carefully made my way towards her room. She always kept the window slightly open enough for someone to sneak in. She was just as clumsy as Sophia in that regard. Before I knew it, I was in Cassie's room, and nothing really stood out until I took a closer look at the desk. A bunch of messy, unorganized paperwork and 2 perfectly packaged, unopened envelopes. To hell with it, I thought, and opened the first one. It was a bank receipt for the purchase of a property in Paris. Holy shit, I didn't know Cassie was moving to Paris, and I certainly didn't know that she had that kind of money. However, my that's weird reaction quickly turned into a what the hell when I opened the second envelope. It was a letter signed by Jamie Watkins. "Dear Sophia, I would like to inform you that so far everything is going swimmingly. Thanks to Maximilian's Surf Shop, I've been able to move my products like never before. And as a thank you gift, I bought you 2 a nice apartment out in the country. I will allow myself to suggest that you 2 move there as quickly as possible. I imagine the dental analysis for Cassie's body will be in rather soon, and when that happens, your cover will be blown. Best regards, Jamie Watkins."
And just like that, our stories are over for another day. But don't worry, we'll be back again very soon with more cozy horror. Until then, this is Dr. Plague, wishing you a wonderful day and a spooky evening.